And as we head into next week, high pressure's generally dominating for all, so lots of fine and settled weather too.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your...
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's yours, and of course, it's theirs. Who are they? We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hours, Dame Conservative MP, former Conservative MP, Dame Andrea Jenkyns, and also former Labour MP, Lord Russell Moyle. Before we get started, let's get your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories. The Prime Minister met with the US President Joe Biden last night to discuss strategy and tactics regarding Ukraine and the Middle East. Meeting at the White House in Washington, D.C., the pair sat down for talks that Sakir described as long and productive. Speaking afterwards, the Prime Minister also said that he and the US President had reached a strong position regarding ending the conflict in Ukraine.
We've stood with Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to self-defence, and we've stood united, not just with our allies here in the US, but across with our NATO allies. That's very, very important to us. But today was about having the chance to talk not just about a particular step or tactic, but the strategy in relation to Ukraine. But also we covered the Middle East in some extensive detail, and other areas across the world. So it was a really important occasion for us to have this chance to discuss with our allies.
Meanwhile, more questions have been asked about the government's decision to cut winter fuel payments following a vote earlier this week. Figures released by the Department for Work and Pensions estimated almost 800,000 pensioners will miss out on the benefit under the new plans. Of those set to lose the support, around two-thirds have a disability and 83% are aged 80 or over. Downing Street says a full impact assessment of the change has not yet taken place. In other news, a rebellion could be brewing within the Labour Party following recent comments by the Prime Minister around a ban on smoking outdoors at pubs. Labour MP for Newcastle upon Tyne East and Wallsend, Mary Glindon, has tabled a motion in Parliament against her own party in order to try and block the potential plans. In the motion, she praised the indoor smoking ban of 2007, but said that extending the ban outdoors could unduly restrict individual liberty. As you've been hearing, today is the first day of the Lib Dem party conference in Brighton, with the cost of living, defence and veterans, climate change and, crucially, their plan to fix the NHS are just some of the topics on the agenda. Earlier this afternoon, party leader Sir Ed Davey arrived at the conference on a jet ski. He's scheduled to speak at the event tomorrow, where a celebration is anticipated after his party won 72 seats in July's general election, their best ever result. Someone who's speaking at the conference today is the Deputy Leader for the Scottish Liberal Democrats, Wendy Chamberlain. Earlier, she told GB News about the need for parties to work together to tackle the broken NHS.
Without sorting social care, and we've been very clear that we are keen to work on a cross-party basis to solve it, because no matter what party is in power, social care as an issue is not going away. But if you don't sort social care, you're not going to fundamentally sort the problems within the NHS. Keir Starmer has said that fixing the NHS is a 10-year job. He won't be able to do that unless he keeps other parties on side so that we can all do that work together.
And today marks National Trail Hunting Day, an annual event organised by the British Hound Sports Association. In their manifesto earlier this year, the Labour Party promised to ban trail hunting. So this year, organisers have said they're sending a strong message to the new government. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 5 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Coming up, as the Lib Dems kick off their annual party conference in Brighton, Deputy Leader Daisy Cooper rules out an alliance with Nigel Farage over electoral reform, despite their two parties agreeing on the issue. Is it time we made our voting system more democratic, or is it even fit for purpose? Then Prince George is flying planes at just 11 years old. Well, obviously not really on his own. Come on. Prince Harry is turning 40 and Meghan Markle might be even more unpopular than we actually thought. Andrew Levin will tell us what's going on behind the palace walls. Then Keir Starmer refuses to confirm any decision as to whether he's going to whether to use long-range missiles to hit targets inside Russia. Following talks with President Joe Biden, we'll be asking, should Ukraine be allowed to use British weapons? Get in touch at gbnews.com/your say. Post your comments. We'd love to hear your views. So let's kick off with the Liberal Democrats, and it's their annual conference in Brighton today. Leader Sir Ed Davey arriving early this afternoon, not on a boat or anything like that to do with water, but actually on a jet ski. Why? Earlier this week, ahead of the gathering, their Deputy Leader Daisy Cooper spoke to our political editor Christopher Hope, with electoral reform being high on the agenda. The Lib Dems have long been advocates of reforming the system, as has one Mr Nigel Farage. But when discussing the prospect of cross-party alliances in Parliament, Ms Cooper was asked if she'd ever work alongside Reform UK for their mutual ambition of electoral reform. Here's what she had to say.
So we'll be interesting alliances forming, I think, in this Parliament. You might
we'll see. I think what we've seen in every Parliament is that, you may not share the same politics, you may not share the same values, but you might share the same interests on a particular issue. And I think that's the way that Parliament works. It's important that actually we can work cross-party, including with backbenchers in the government, to put pressure on the government on any given issue.
Because you have common cause with someone else, don't you? Nigel Farage.
Apparently so.
Would you campaign for electoral reform with Nigel Farage?
No.
You wouldn't?
No.
But you've got the same, you both want it, because you both get more MPs if you have it.
Nigel Farage can campaign for PR if he wants to. We will campaign for PR as well.
But that means you're on the same platform as him.
I don't have to be on the same platform as him. We'll have our own platform.
OK.
Even though they think the same thing on that particular issue, you could share the platform, and I mean that's how it goes. But it seems the Lib Dems would not be willing to work with Nigel Farage, even though they agree on the issue, and doing so would increase chances of success. So what does that tell you? But do we really need to change the voting system? Joining me now is the Reform UK MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe. Rupert, you heard that seems a little bit stubborn in my view. If somebody shares the same view as you, irrespective of what party you're in, you would think that perhaps Daisy Cooper might be prepared to agree and share a platform with Nigel Farage on that one issue.
Well, it's a very interesting one, Nana, because when we were in the European Parliament at the Brexit Party, the Lib Dems wouldn't even share a car with us from the station. So it shows you that they're fairly narrow-minded when it comes to cooperating across party. So I'm not sure we could cooperate with the Lib Dems. Half the time, I don't think they know what they want. In one word, does the electoral system need reforming? Yes. Do we necessarily want it to be reformed now? I'm not sure, because we've broken into Parliament with 5 MPs, which is a huge achievement, really. And I think the country is in such a mess, Nana. We've got councils of feral. We've got the two-party system, which has grown out of the first past the post situation. And as I've said in the past, Labour sort of either hand power to the Tories and say, your turn to play with the toy set, or the Tories hand power to Labour and say, it's your turn to play with the toy set. Meanwhile, the ultimate power is the civil service behind them, which has grown like a weed. And that's been replicated across all the local councils. So you've ended up with this woke DEI culture, which is infecting Britain with a nasty virus. And as a result of that, you know, we've got these 9 million people not working actually on benefits. You know, and the country is in dire straits. So in a way, having broken into Parliament, I'm pretty sure we're going to win the next election if we get the party structured right, if we get the correct candidates, which we're busy working on. We've got our conference next Friday, so we're going to be discussing and announcing how we're going to restructure the party. So for me, I think the job of effectively Hercules performing his 5th Labour, which was the Augean stables. I mean, there's a lot of muck to be cleared out of both local and national government. And I think if we win in a first past the post system, which I think we can, because I think we're going to do to Labour what we did to the Tories last time, because both parties are frankly not fit to govern. So, and then we have the power to change things. But once we're in power, would we conceptually support PR? Very definitely, but not, I think, initially. Initially, we need the power to be able to make change.
But that seems a bit... Look, first of all, it's unlikely the Labour Party would ever consider such a thing, because they are sitting on a nice big majority of, I think, 158 seats. So they've got a big majority there. But Reform UK got 14% of the overall vote and only 0.77% of the seats. Labour got 34% of the vote and 63% of the seats. And the Liberal Democrats, well, of course, they got 3.5 million votes, whereas you got 4 million. But yet they have, 70 or 71 seats? That's...
I think it was 72
seats, and you've only got 5.
We got 4.1 million votes, and we got 5 MPs. So, but we came very close in a lot of constituencies. So all it will take is a sort of a continuance of the British people effectively the penny dropping and them realising they're not being well governed. And I still think there's a heart to the country. I'm not sure whether London is actually now rescuable. I think London has become almost a sort of a failing nation state on its own. But the rest of the country certainly still has the basis of common sense and decency, which has always run through this country, which has been destroyed largely by mass, uncontrolled legal and illegal immigration. But, you know, being in Great Yarmouth for the last 2 days, you sort of see how local government is not serving them well, national government's not serving them well. And I think the people in power need to remember that it's the public who votes them in, and it's the public that ultimately pays their wages. And I think a lot of the time, both central government and local government loses sight of that fact. And the COVID crisis was used to effectively oppress most people in the country. I think bad decisions were made. It strengthened the power of the state. And, you know, in 1997, the state accounted for 32% of GDP. It now accounts for 46% of GDP. That's probably a very conservative figure because it doesn't include a lot of the indirect sort of GDP, which government now accounts for as well. But that is not a desirable nor indeed a sustainable situation. So, as I say, we need the Reform Party performing the act of Hercules in his fifth labour and cleaning out the Augean stables.
Well, look, I mean, I hear you, and that's very laudable that you would rather sort of get into power using the first past the post, and then when you're in power, you said that you'd consider changing it. But what about for the British public and the electorate, who may see this as quite undemocratic, watching the Labour Party just making up committees, for example? They've come up with a committee so they can then determine who can have a second job or not, which sounds like what's going to happen. None of you are in that committee. There's no reform person in that committee, and it seems to be full of people who would probably agree with the narrative that comes from the Labour Party. So, on this level, as a consumer watching this, a lot of people will be going, well, that's all very well, but you're not really representing the British people. You're coming up with policies that you're literally railroading in, and there's no effective opposition.
Well, I think it's quite extraordinary that we are not represented on any select committees. I mean, Lee Anderson, as you probably saw in the past, did some great work on the select committee he was on. And, you know, with the experience we've got, you know, I'm 66, I've got experience in lots of businesses, including farming, insurance, business across the sector. And Labour have got, you know, 21, 22, 23-year-old MPs who arguably have got a chance of being on a select committee, whereas people with experience haven't, which again, as you quite rightly say, shows up how deficient government is. And I can tell you, in Parliament, I'm of adequate intelligence, and I've sort of managed to survive 66 years reasonably successfully. But trying to actually work out what's going on in Parliament is extremely difficult because it mutates like the AIDS virus on a daily basis, and you never quite know what you're going to be discussing or what's going to be happening. And again, I think that is the way in which this two-party system that has grown up has managed to keep control of what's going on. But, you know, now we're in there, we are getting to grips with it, we are landing some punches, and we're going to continue to do that. We are going to go on exposing the deficiencies of the entire system, and that goes for local and national government.
Yeah, all right, Rupert, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That's Rupert Lowe, MP for Reform UK in Great Yarmouth. What do you think? 40 minutes after 3 o'clock, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is a GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, and as Sir Keir Starmer refuses to confirm any decision to use long-range missiles to hit targets inside Russia, we'll be asking, should Ukraine be allowed to use British weapons? Next, though, I'm asking, is our voting system fit for purpose, or should we stick to the tried and tested person, one vote? My panel, 2 former MPs, will discuss that as ever. Send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. This is GB News.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Club Classique, previously known as Méthode Club Classique, is South Africa's answer to the famous French fizz.
They basically have to be made in South Africa and also by the traditional method. So it's exactly the same method as champagne, but is made in a different place. So they can't call it champagne because it's not made in Champagne, but it's very similar.
And on the other hand, in Prosecco, it all happens in a sort of great vat.
Yes,
doesn't it?
Yes.
Which is why Prosecco tastes different from other sparkling wines.
Prosecco will taste much more fruity because you don't have the thing called lees aging. Insert the wine with brioche, biscuity, toasty flavours and aromas, which makes it much more complex.
Here we've got a thing called Journey's End.
Yes.
And would you like to tell us, I've said that people didn't want to splash out on champers. They might want to go the Cap Classique route.
Yes.
What would they be saving? How much might that cost in a shop?
So this one here will cost you about £17. So it is considerably, I guess, better value for money than champagne.
But I'd also comment that it's probably a good deal cheaper than English sparkling wine, which is interesting.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, this
Dessert.
second one is
Yes.
called Kleiner Salsa.
It is, yes.
And you told me this is a little more expensive than the first one.
It is.
What price were we talking about here?
About 20.
About 20.
Yes.
Not vastly more.
No.
Are we going to taste £3 worth of improvement? Oh, and by the way, it went so beautifully with the cheese, just as you advised. Are South African sparkling wines, Cap Classique, are they pretty well available in English wine shops, British wine shops?
They are, yes. You can find them in all of the supermarkets. Growing and that's on offer at the moment, actually. That's $11.99 from Waitrose, which is exceptional value.
That is insane.
Yes, it is. And you can also... So I bought with me today, so this is a Pinot Noir only, so that's a rosé sparkling.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Remember to get in touch, post your comments, thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. I will read some of those throughout the show, but it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is the UK's electoral system undemocratic? Now, Labour won the 2024 general election by a landslide, as we all saw. But does a landslide of seats mean a landslide of votes? I mean, the first-past-the-post system, not necessarily. OK, so in July, Labour took 411 seats out of 650. That's the total that are there in Parliament, actually plus one, which is the Speaker. But only 34% of the vote. By contrast, smaller parties took significant voter support with small translation into seats. So what do you think? You've seen that on screen. It's up there telling you votes and seats, and it just looked very disproportionate. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is the UK's electoral system actually undemocratic? Well, joining me now is former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins, and also former Labour MP Lloyd, not Lord, I was about to call you Lord Russell, but it's Lloyd Russell Moyle. Not yet, but you probably will be at some point. Well, if you go back in.
Wishful thinking, yeah.
Wishful thinking. I'll start with you, Andrea. Because I know you've obviously you've lost your seat. I thought you were a very good MP. I wasn't in your constituency, but it's a tough all road. That's the deal with the job. But actually looking at it, for me as a British voter, looking at it and seeing the number of seats that some parties got in comparison to the number of votes seems a bit wrong.
I like first past the post. I don't like it as how they have it in other countries, like Italy, because you end up with these constant coalitions. You don't have the stability; they can fall apart. Now, don't forget, it wasn't that long ago we had a vote on something similar when it was a coalition with the Lib Dems. They called for it then, and I was on the no to AV bus to try and persuade people to stick with first past the post. But my view,
to AV,
because it was an AV plus voting system that they wanted, the Lib Dems wanted, and so I was campaigning to keep the traditional first past the post.
AV plus, is that the same as proportional representation, or is it?
It's similar, isn't it? It's just slightly
what way
different.
Is it different?
I can't remember now. Can you, Lloyd?
The proposal was AV.
It's going back,
AV
what,
plus,
2011, wasn't it?
Just AV, which means you still have single constituencies.
That was right,
But
yes.
in every constituency, you have to get over 50% of the vote. It doesn't actually lead to proportionality. But what you see in the Australian Parliament is the one that runs AV around the world. What it does mean is that you don't have to think tactically. So you can vote for who you want on the first slot, and then you get a second slot. It's very similar. Many people will remember how we used to vote for London Mayor or for the regional mayors. That is a version of AV.
I see. So
I mean, my view, actually, Nana, if you don't mind me saying, is, look, the amount of times we've had a vote on our voting system, and that was, what, 2011, 2012-ish, as I recall. And so we've already had it.
2011.
2011, OK. And I remember the Remainers during Brexit wanting the second vote. I used to call them sore losers.
Yeah.
That we've had this vote, and these same people now. I'm quite astounded. Reform. I like reform. I've got respect for Nigel. But
what do you think of joining
these
reform?
same people are now. I'll answer that in a second, Nana. Are now calling for changing our voting system when we've had one not that a few years ago, but these same people doesn't want a second referendum. So to me, you can't pick and choose. I'm a Democrat. People have said no to the... people kick me out. That's how much I'm a Democrat. And I still wouldn't change it.
But why can't you pick and choose which things you have a referendum on?
Well, we've already had a referendum. And do we keep having a referendum every, 3 or 4, 5 years just because people didn't like the original result, what the public voted for? They do that in Ireland, didn't they, to go into
Lloyd,
the EU?
what are your thoughts, Lloyd?
Well, I mean, the referendum question is a slightly different question. We did have 2 referendums on the EU. If you remember, the first one we voted to remain, and the second one we voted to leave. So you can rerun referendum.
No, but there's a big gap between it, wasn't it?
How long?
What, about 40 years, wasn't it?
40 years ago. I don't think you can bring that up, really.
No, but what I mean is it's not like a never ever, is it?
No.
So you do re-look at things from time to time. My view is that the current system doesn't work. But we've got to find a system that does work. You know, kind of Churchill always said democracy is... I'm bastardising the quote now because I'll get it wrong. But he used to say something along the lines of, you know, democracy is an awful system, but it's the best of all the awful systems that we have. And I think there's something similar about the voting system that we have at the moment. The individual seats provide a real important role of Parliament in Britain.
Yes.
British parliamentarians,
agree with that.
Unlike the rest of the world, are not just legislators. Our historic reason that we exist is to actually petition for our local communities.
Right.
The Magna Carta...
Yeah, but they're not, though, are they?
Well, they're not.
Well, they're not, though.
I think they do exactly...
Let's talk about Labour.
I think MPs...
I don't think they do.
Of all parties, actually, do that very well.
No, I don't think they do.
But we don't want a list system like they have with the EU, do
I
we?
don't think they do, actually.
You need the constituency link.
That's where we will have to agree to disagree.
Okay, well, hold on.
Every Conservative
hold on, Lloyd.
That I could... I think they're good constituents.
Lloyd.
Go on.
I don't think they do petition very... Sorry, I'm speaking. I don't think they do petition very well for our communities. For example, let's take the winter fuel allowance, where most constituencies, a lot of the people within those constituencies did not want that winter fuel allowance, fuel payment rejected, OK? The Labour Party, who now have this massive majority of seats, 52 of their MPs actually abstained, so completely gutless, even though their constituents would have asked them to vote in favour of keeping this allowance. So I don't think they do. And there are many other issues like that they don't do. So defend that then, explain that one.
I think that's an issue with not being in the manifesto, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there is an issue, of course, that you will have MPs coming to conclusions that are different to what you might agree in your constituency. That is different from representing the broad area of the constituents in that area. And
why is that different?
Why is that different? It's because, actually, when I was in Parliament last week chatting to my colleagues, in even areas where they are older demographics, the number of people that had written in about it were in the few hundreds. Now, a few hundred is high, but it's not the highest issue that you get in your mailbag.
No, but don't you think
they were saying...
Because not that age group, not necessarily on the internet, actually, as well.
But that age group is usually very good at engaging politicians through letter writing and things like this, if they need to. And we see how, actually, there is quite a lot of support for that policy. I personally think that policy was...
Can I come in here?
Sorry, Dame Andrea.
I completely agree there, Russell. I mean, our email address is open to the 4th of November, isn't it? And I've been inundated with hundreds of emails on this myself as an ex-MP, and so much so that I don't like stepping on the new MP's toes, but in the end, I thought, right, I've got to get a petition going. So I was there on the Morley High Street getting hundreds of signatures. People do not want this. And it's how it looks as well. It wasn't in the manifesto. And when energy prices are so hard, to punish our pensioners is just cruel.
No, look, I'm not going to defend a policy that I think they could have done the same thing through a better means, and I think that how it's been done is ham-fisted. But let's talk about representation. That is a national issue. The role of an MP is to represent those local issues like no one else can do. And when there is something wrong, when bureaucrats overstep and they deny you your benefit, or they dig a hole in the road and they never fill it in properly, there is often no one apart from a local MP that can step in and say, hang on a second.
Yeah.
There's not just always the authorities. It sometimes can be, Sky overcharges someone.
Lloyd, nobody's denying. Nobody's denying.
And in a different voting system.
Nobody's denying that the role of a local MP is that other side of things where you deal with individual issues with constituents and represent them in Parliament. But the role of the MP is always also to represent your constituency as a whole. So if your constituency as a whole come to you and say, listen, this winter fuel payment business is not on, and we want the government to continue to pay it, which I suspect, if people did have this vote out loud and allowed the public to have some sort of referendum, which I'm not suggesting we do, but I'm just saying that if you put that into practice in each of those constituencies, I think that pretty much all of those constituencies would vote to keep it.
I think that's a misunderstanding of our democratic system.
Sorry, are you saying that I misunderstood the democratic system?
Yes, of our democratic system.
No, why is that? Why is that?
Our democratic system is that you elect someone in your local to represent your local area on the broad range of views.
That's right.
And you might disagree with
broad range of views.
with one or two of those views. And everyone in that constituency might disagree with the same one of those views. But if they are counterbalanced by agreeing with all the other views, people vote for them.
Listen, I'm sorry, but I just found that a little bit patronising, to be honest with you. I totally understand the system. I totally understand that it represents a broad range of views. My point is that I don't believe that those MPs are representing a broad range of views. I believe they're scared of losing their seats. I believe that's why over 50 of them have abstained, and I believe they're probably scared because
we had an election only a few months ago.
Keir Starmer actually ditched 7 of his MPs for disagreeing with one of his policies.
I mean, Nana as well, I've had people contact me and say they want a recall petition, but obviously at the moment it can only be done in Parliament.
What does that mean for the listener?
Well, if an MP's done something wrong in Parliament, then the committee in Parliament decides that can go potentially to a by-election if they get 10,000 signatures. Now, I've had constituents, quite a number, contacting me, former constituents, saying they would like a recall system without the parliamentary saying so if they get 10,000 signatures to trigger that. So that's another interesting aspect that people have been writing to me about.
You could get 10,000 signatures in almost every constituency of this country every moment
I'm not
of the
saying
week.
it's right or wrong. I'm saying what people are writing to me about.
I get that's what people are saying, but I think that policy would be complete chaos. That would provide no stability for our. You have to have the ability for people to disagree and then look to see how they performed over a year or over a few years, and then say, OK, I disagreed on that, but they performed really well on the other things, and so I want them to continue. If you suddenly start to create an electoral system, whatever that is, with recalls, but also with too much proportionality.
But the most important thing, though, Russell, is actually laying everything out in the manifesto. These were the curveball surprises, which the British public didn't know about. So I'm sure that they wouldn't have had this majority had the public known that
exactly.
they were doing that.
And there lies the point, you see. If they are representative of their constituents and they do things that are not within their manifesto, then they are obligated to listen to what their constituents are saying. And my problem with them is that not only were over 50 of them gutless, the fact is that a lot of them went along with this despite their constituents probably rejecting and not wanting to do it.
50 abstained in a PR system, which is what you're indicating. And I'm broadly in favour of a different system, but as I say, the devil is in the detail. In most PR systems that are using a hammer to crack a nut, list systems, etc., people are more gutless. People don't ever break the whip.
Where's your evidence of that?
Well,
you're just saying that.
No,
they haven't got the constituency link, have they?
Because they haven't got the constituency link. The person who decides whether they continue to be on the list is no longer the local members. It's just party on high. Party on high decides whether you can stay or not. Parties can kick you out more easily. And in a list system, basically, you are loyal only to the party and not to the people.
And when you say a list system, just be clear.
A list system is what we used to have in the European Parliament, basically.
Absolutely.
So you vote for the party and not for the individual, and that means as soon as the party falls out in love with that individual, the party gets rid of that individual.
But the thing is, though, there's an element of that anyway, right? So people vote for the party, but you end up with the MP for that party.
Yeah.
So that's what we have.
So 50 people were able to not vote with the Labour Party this time round and make a clear statement that this was a difficult decision to be made. If you'd had a list system, you would have had less.
All right, well, we'll talk more about that. Russell Moyle and also Andrea Jenkins joining me as my feisty panel. Lots of you being in touch as well. Send your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Lots still to come. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. First, though, let's get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories this hour. The Prime Minister met with the President Joe Biden at the White House in the American capital last night. And the pair sat down for strategy talks about global conflicts that Sir Keir Starmer described as long and productive. Speaking afterwards, the Prime Minister also said that he and the US President had reached a strong position regarding the ending of the conflict in Ukraine.
We've stood with Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to self-defence, and we've stood united, not just with our allies here in the US, but across with our NATO allies. That's very, very important to us. But today was about having the chance to talk not just about a particular step or tactic, but the strategy in relation to Ukraine. But also we cover the Middle East in some extensive detail and other areas across the world. So it was a really important occasion for us to have this chance to discuss with our allies.
Meanwhile, the government's facing further backlash following its decision to cut winter fuel payments. Figures released by the Department for Work and Pensions estimated almost 800,000 pensioners will miss out on the benefit under the new plans. Of those set to lose the support, around two-thirds have a disability and 83% are aged 80 or over. Downing Street says a full impact assessment of the change hasn't yet taken place. And today marks National Trail Hunting Day, an annual event organised by the British Hound Sports Association. In their manifesto earlier this year, the Labour Party promised to ban trail hunting. So this year, organisers have said they're sending a strong message to the new government. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we have a bit of a split in the weather for this weekend, fairly unsettled in the north, but mostly fine and dry elsewhere, and it is going to be feeling warmer than of late too. And the reason for this split in the weather is that we've got high pressure dominating the south, but generally low pressure in the north. And notice the squeeze in the isobars there too, so fairly blustery conditions in the northwest. As we head into this evening, it is going to be turning fairly chilly across the south, particularly under clear spells. May even see some rural grass frost develop in southern areas. But across the north, largely mild, plenty of blustery showers moving their way in across western parts of Scotland, and then some rain and drizzle into northern England by the time we reach Sunday morning. So fairly chilly in the south, but milder in the north. Now, to start the second half of the weekend, we're going to see plenty of bright spells, but also plenty of showers moving their way into northwest Scotland. Still fairly blustery here, though winds should ease up through the day. Quite a cloudy start in Northern Ireland, and we've still got this band of rain and drizzle moving into northern England, northern parts of Wales. But elsewhere, there should be plenty of bright sunshine. But as I say, a fairly chilly start in the south. Now, through the course of the morning, this band of rain and drizzle is going to be fairly slow moving, so in some places it's going to remain fairly damp through the day. Plenty of showers across Scotland, these banding together to bring some longer spells of rain at times. May see some hail and some thunder mixed in there too. But across the Midlands and the south, once again, another dry, fine, settled day, perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. But feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. And then into the evening, we'll eventually see that cloud, rain and drizzle ease away, and it's going to be turning cold once again across the north, but those showers are going to be easing away. And as we head into next week, high pressure's generally dominating for all, so lots of fine and settled weather too.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 37 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Right, well, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. And every Saturday I love to give you a rundown, and who better to do so than royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela, welcome.
Hello.
Right,
Thank you.
shall we start with Prince Harry, because it's coming up to his 40th birthday?
Yes, it's his 40th.
Is it the 15th, which is...
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
His 40th birthday is tomorrow. Very different from his 30th, where he was at home and he had a big party that his brother organised. No family be with him. But he has said the most ridiculous things, I think. And one of them is that he wants to do, his aim is he's committed to make the world a better place. That's a ludicrous thing to say, frankly.
Why?
Because it can...
What's ludicrous about?
Because he wants
He's
to do
committed.
small things, and it's a nonsense. No, it's never going to happen. It's not true.
But that's a nice thing to say. Like, if I said I want to make the world a better place, some people might think, oh, isn't that lovely of her to say that?
No, I don't think they would, Anna. Because I think it's a nonsense, isn't it? The trouble with him now is that it's his no fault. He does nothing wrong. Nothing is wrong with him. And he was still arguing about his father, with his father, and his brothers and his sister-in-law. And he thinks that they were the ones who should give up. And he isn't. And I think it's a real tragedy. He's very happy that he's got his children, he said. He thinks he's very delighted, and they're the best birthday present he can have. And then he's going up the mountain in America with certain friends, and no Meghan. I think it's very interesting that he's doing that.
I can't help laughing at the first bit where he said he wants to make the world a better place. If you want to make it a better place, why don't you go see your dad? Meghan can go see her dad. You can all be nice about it and stop writing memoirs slagging everybody else off.
Well, that's right, you see. I mean, with his Spare, which is coming out as a paperback soon, I hope he takes out all that nasty stuff that he's written about them. I don't think he will, but then why can he possibly imagine that they would want him? The reason he doesn't get to see his father is, one, because he demands it when it suits him, which is wrong, because you say to your father, especially as he's unwell, you say, when will it suit you? But he never does that. He actually feels he's right, and I think that that's what that Meghan has poured into him. Like she said that when they went to Australia, soon after they were married, that she thought it was appalling that they didn't pay them.
Yeah, I mean, that was... I remember that. That was an old story. But
yes, it's an old story, but that's what he's lived on ever since. He's very cross.
But he's a 40-year-old man.
Yes.
And he should be able to do... It can't all be Meghan's fault. He has to take responsibility. And I'm not defending her. I'm just saying that he's making ridiculous decisions. Nobody's speaking out of his mouth. He's speaking them.
Yes, he's speaking them.
It's coming out of his mouth.
That's right, yes.
Should we go on to the nastiness about the Catherine video? I can't imagine that you could even be nasty about this beautiful video. What on earth is going on?
I thought it was delightful. I think there is a campaign against her. I don't know why. And I think that it's appalling, and I think she's behaved so graciously. And it's lovely to see a family who really love each other and play. You can tell with children, they're not going to pretend that they're having a lovely time. But they enjoyed themselves in the outside with nature. And Charlotte, who adores her mother, was there with her all the time. I think she was looking after her. She's a wonderful little girl. And she was let the others run, and she was often with her mother.
Now, I know you've got something to disclose that nobody
Yes.
knows, but before she does that, let's play you a little bit of that video and then wait with bated breath, because there's something that nobody knows, and Angela has it. Stay with us.
I don't think anybody knows.
You lead the way. As the summer comes to an end, I cannot tell you what a relief it is to have finally completed my chemotherapy treatment. Doing what I can to stay cancer-free is now my focus. Although I have finished chemotherapy, my path to healing and full recovery is long, and I must continue to take each day as it comes.
Oh, we love Catherine, isn't she amazing?
We do. Now,
So what
the
is
two
it- what's
things,
the thing?
yes. We see that she has a white butterfly in her hand that flies off. And I'm very fascinated by butterflies, and they're a symbol of transformation, rebirth, hope, freedom and love, right? And she also had a white feather, which also blew away, and that is for trust, honour, strength, wisdom and freedom. So she wouldn't have just held them for anything. That's what she's feeling at the moment. She's trying to be strong, and she's trying to stay in love, and she's actually needing those things to help her carry on and get better. What do you think of that?
We love that, because the thing is, this is the thing, isn't it? I do, in some ways, feel for Meghan, because Catherine is literally perfect. What do you do with that? Meghan must be seething seeing this, but I would like to see them all reconcile and all be nice and friendly and happy, but that's
It's
just not gonna
impossible.
happen, is it?
It's not going to happen because they won't give in, and Meghan and Harry won't give in an inch, and I think the royal family have had enough of it. But what's interesting now is that, you know, Meghan and Harry pay magazines to say nice things about them.
Never. How do you know that?
I do know that. But the Hollywood Reporter has decided to say what they think, and they've gone on about how difficult she is. She is known as Duchess Difficult, and she holds Harry as if he was a prisoner, and she belittles people, and they're both of them are poor decision makers, and she marches around as if she's a dictator in high heels, barking orders.
Where was this?
This is a paper called Hollywood Reporter.
And they've actually put that in there?
They've put that in there.
Wow.
Yes. So now we see that people are not going to pretend that she's Miss Lovely, and actually going to bring out the truth now. This has been going on since she was still in Buckingham Palace, and the staff kept leaving. But the staff are leaving and leaving and leaving because they just can't bear it.
Well, what about Prince George learning to fly?
Yeah.
Obviously not on his own. He's not going to get in the
No, he's 11. Right, and he's have flying lessons. He wants to be like his dad. It's the sweetest thing. Prince Philip started flying when he was 31. William and Harry didn't fly until they'd been in the military. But William was a trained helicopter pilot, and he did a lot of search and rescue to save people's lives if they were ill. And now little George, I think they're doing something that's really wonderful for him. It'll be really exciting. And you can't imagine it really, but it's old enough to do that. I'd be terrified if it was my son, aged 11.
I'd be terrified. But it's ironic, isn't it?
With his dad, it's a very nice thing to do because they are similar, and you can see that he loves him really hugely, and they like going to football together and all those boys' things. And this is another boys' thing that's a lovely thing to him to do.
It's lovely, isn't it? And possibly what he didn't get when he was young in terms of his relationship with his father. But you know what? It's interesting that William will be flying the search and rescue helicopter, but Harry will be flying the Apache and shooting everyone down. Angela Levin, thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. That is royal biographer and expert Angela Levin. Right, stay with me. 45 minutes after 3 o'clock. Next, our Sir Keir Starmer refuses to confirm any decision to use whether they will allow Ukraine to use long-range missiles to hit targets inside Russia. Following his talks with Joe Biden, we'll be asking you whether Ukraine should be allowed to use British weapons for those purposes. Will be joining us.
GB News News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle is finding it very, very difficult to recruit staff for her lifestyle brand, which is called American Riviera Orchard. There's a mouthful for you. Apart from a jam gifted to influencers earlier this year, the brand is yet to launch any products.
Well, let's speak to our US royal and showbiz reporter, Kinsey Schofield. Good morning to you, Kinsey. Who's going to want that gig?
I mean, there are rumors that Netflix has said, allow us to manage the retail strategy. If she can't manage to find a CEO or somebody willing to work with her, Netflix sees an opportunity there.
To be an influencer, people have got to want to be like you. Do people like her?
I mean, this has been her biggest issue in the last few years, is realizing that there's been a shift when it comes to their popularity. Harry and Meghan believed their own hype when they said on that Netflix series that the reason they were ostracized was because they were much more popular than the British royals. They were more popular than Prince William, more popular than Princess Kate. And their popularity has declined immensely. And now they are desperate to win people over again.
Most people have to be liked or admired, and I put it to you, Kinsey, she'll have difficulty on both fronts.
Netflix is not going to renew this contract. I mean, they are fearful that this cooking show, this polo show, will not connect with the audience. And now they want us to believe that Meghan is at home cooking all this banana bread and having her best friend Chrissy Teigen over for scones. People aren't going to buy it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or GBNews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. 48 minutes after 3 o'clock. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Ukraine be allowed to use British weapons and missiles? Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer met the President Joe Biden last night to discuss strategy and tactics regarding Ukraine and the Middle East. The Prime Minister said that he and the US President had reached a strong position regarding ending the conflict in Ukraine. While this all comes as David Lammy announced an extra £600 million worth of support for Ukraine, taking the US's bill to nearly £8 billion. But I want to know, is it time we considered putting our country's needs first? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Ukraine be allowed to use British weapons and missiles? Well, joining me now is... I've forgotten your name, but it's on the... No, it's an international security analyst. We'll get it.
Hi, Nana. I know it's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Listen, this is rumbling on.
Yeah.
In my view, I don't see the point of giving someone weapons that they can't use. What's the point? But where do you stand with it?
Well, it's a chess game, Nana, as it always is in war. It's about strategy and it's about playing off one thing against another. And the reason why this whole discussion about long-range ballistic precision missiles has come up is really as a counter to the supply of what is called the FAF-360 missile by Iran to Russia. Now, the FAF-360 has about a 75-mile range, which is sufficient from within Russian territory them to have the ability to strike pretty much anywhere within the Ukraine. Now, the Storm Shadow, which is this ballistic missile, it's an English or a British stroke French, Anglo-French missile that's been built and developed has about 190 plus miles. Now, that has the ability, if they had it in Ukraine, to launch it against, obviously, Russia, they could get to the Kremlin. They could get into the heart of Moscow.
So of course.
So really, where it comes down to is the reason Antony Blinken and David Lammy, when they were down in Ukraine last week, were mentioning this as a possibility of the supply coming in was probably more of a poker bluff to Russia to say, do not take this supply from Iran. Because ultimately, it's a threat that they can't follow through with, because if they do, that then immediately ties NATO to engaging Russia in war.
But they already are, and what's the point of supplying them the missiles and saying, oh, you can't use them within this, that and the other? I mean, that's rubbish, especially if Russia are taking weapons from Iran and, other countries. If you've got to buy your weapons from someone. So...
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, but there's a kind of limitation which has been put on. It's like there hasn't been any fighter jets provided to Ukraine. And one of the reasons being is that in terms of, obviously, the piloting of those planes would require NATO country involvement. Likewise with these Storm Shadow missiles. Now, because they're precision-based, they would require satellite support to basically fix in on its target. So you paint the target, you designate where it is. It would need a satellite for the GPS for it to actually locate into that target. Now, Ukraine doesn't have its own satellites. Europe does, America does. So for them to enable that, it would obviously mean that NATO has been complicit and participant in the launching of those missiles.
Yeah,
Equally, in terms of the engineers launching those missiles, Ukraine doesn't have the capability. NATO countries would have to provide that.
But NATO countries are already, complicit in the supply of these weapons anyway.
Yeah.
So this is dancing on the head of a pin.
It is.
The reality is, if they were to perhaps strike within Russia and strike some of the Russian targets and disable some of the Russian capability, which is ultimately what they would be aiming at. They wouldn't be aiming at civilians, they'd be aiming at military targets. If they could disable some of Russia's capability, then surely that's better for everyone.
It is. I mean, it is better, certainly for Ukraine. Is it better for us as a NATO member?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily so sure about that.
So we're throwing Ukraine under the bus?
We could very well be, but there's this very fine, albeit blurry line that we're treading right now in terms of providing training, providing resources, providing intelligence, providing weaponry, all these grey areas. But this definitive stance of these particular missiles, which have the capacity. So that ultimately means you've pushed the game so far up, high up, that Putin has no option but to retaliate. Now, that means he could retaliate anywhere to any of the NATO countries, because NATO complicitly, as you say, Nana, would be a conglomerate agreeing to play on this.
Yeah, but then the next move is that then NATO again reciprocates back to him. Now, he would know that.
Yep.
But I actually think a lot of the time we draw his red lines when he hasn't drawn any anyway. So we draw a lot of the red lines and say, oh, well, this will cross one of Putin's red lines. He hasn't even thought about it, or he hasn't even said it. And probably if it were the boot were on the other foot, he wouldn't even look at it to think about a red line. No, I mean, we're already into very dangerous territory. 3 weeks ago, there was obviously the incursion by the Ukraine forces into Russian territory, into Kursk. They've got control of some 100 square kilometres, obviously, of region that they've got. Well, Geddes, thank you very much. Really good to get your expert advice. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. Next, my monologue on Rachel Reeves. Or would that be Rachel Freeze taking winter fuel money off pensioners but still charging the taxpayer for her own? How is that fair? Let's get some weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we have a bit of a split in the weather for this weekend, fairly unsettled in the north, but mostly fine and dry elsewhere, and it is going to be feeling warmer than of late too. And the reason for this split in the weather is that we've got high pressure dominating the south, but generally low pressure in the north. And notice the squeeze in the isobars there too, so fairly blustery conditions in the northwest. As we head into this evening, it is going to be turning fairly chilly across the south, particularly under clear spells. May even see some rural grass frost develop in southern areas. But across the north, largely mild, plenty of blustery showers moving their way in across western parts of Scotland, and then some rain and drizzle into northern England by the time we reach Sunday morning. So fairly chilly in the south, but milder in the north. Now, to start the second half of the weekend, we're going to see plenty of bright spells, but also plenty of showers moving their way into northwest Scotland. Still fairly blustery here, though winds should ease up through the day. Quite a cloudy start in Northern Ireland, and we've still got this band of rain and drizzle moving into northern England, northern parts of Wales. But elsewhere, there should be plenty of bright sunshine. But as I say, a fairly chilly start in the south. Now, through the course of the morning, this band of rain and drizzle is going to be fairly slow moving, so in some places it's going to remain fairly damp through the day. Plenty of showers across Scotland, these banding together to bring some longer spells of rain at times. May see some hail and some thunder mixed in there too. But across the Midlands and the south, once again, another dry, fine, settled day, perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. But feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. And then into the evening, we'll eventually see that cloud, rain and drizzle ease away, and it's going to be turning cold once again across the north, but those showers are going to be easing away. And as we head into next week, high pressure's generally dominating for all, so lots of fine and settled weather too.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good luck.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon and welcome to GB News Live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's 4 o'clock. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins and former Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle. Coming up, Nana's niggle, Rachel's freeze. Yes, will readily claim her expenses, but which will include cost of heating and designated home expenses, but pensioners will be left out in the cold. Then a junk food ban. Secret Eaters and Fat Families' Steve Miller will be there to discuss. Plus Lizzie Cundy will be live to talk about her experience and life on the red carpet. And should smartphones be banned? What do you think for the under-16s? Before we get started, let's get your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories. A man allegedly sexually assaulted a woman on the same day he was released from prison under the government's early release scheme. It's understood he was released as part of the policy which aims to ease prison overcrowding on its first day on Tuesday. Well, he allegedly reoffended in Sittingbourne in Kent and was later arrested at an address in South London. He appeared at a magistrate's court on Thursday, charged with sexual assault, and is due to appear at Crown Court next month. He has been recalled to prison. In other news, the Prime Minister met with US President Joe Biden last night to discuss strategy and tactics regarding Ukraine and the Middle East. Meeting at the White House in Washington, D.C., the pair sat down for talks that Sir Keir Starmer described as long and productive. Speaking afterwards, the Prime Minister also said that he and the US President had reached a strong position regarding ending the conflict in Ukraine.
We've stood with Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to self-defence, and we've stood united, not just with our allies here in the US, but across with our NATO allies. That's very, very important to us. But today was about having the chance to talk not just about a particular step or tactic, but the strategy in relation to Ukraine. But also we covered the Middle East in some extensive detail, and other areas across the world. So it was a really important occasion for us to have this chance to discuss with our allies.
Meanwhile, more questions have been asked about the government's decision to cut winter fuel payments following a vote earlier this week. Figures released by the Department for Work and Pensions estimated almost 800,000 pensioners will miss out on the benefits under the new plans. Of those set to lose the support, around 2/3 have a disability and 83% are aged 80 or over. Downing Street says a full impact assessment of the change has not yet taken place. Now, a rebellion could be brewing within the Labour Party following recent comments by the Prime Minister around a ban on smoking outdoors at pubs. Labour MP for Newcastle upon Tyne East and Wallsend, Mary Glindon, has tabled a motion in Parliament against her own party in order to try and block the potential plans. In the motion, she praised the indoor smoking ban of 2007, but said extending that ban outdoors could unduly restrict individual liberty. Today is the first day of the Liberal Democrats Party Conference in Brighton, with the cost of living, defence and veterans, climate change and, crucially, their plan to fix the NHS are just some of the topics on the agenda. Earlier this afternoon, party leader Sir Ed Davey arrived at the conference on a jet ski. He's scheduled to speak at the event tomorrow, where a celebration is anticipated after his party won 72 seats in July's general election, their best ever result. And someone who's speaking at the conference today is the deputy leader for the Scottish Liberal Democrats, Wendy Chamberlain. Earlier, she told GB News about the need for parties to work together to tackle the broken NHS.
Without sorting social care, and we've been very clear that we are keen to work on a cross-party basis to solve it, because no matter what party is in power, social care as an issue is not going away. But if you don't sort social care, you're not going to fundamentally sort the problems within the NHS. Keir Starmer has said that fixing the NHS is a 10-year job. He won't be able to do that unless he keeps other parties on side so that we can all do that work together.
And today marks National Trail Hunting Day, an annual event organised by the British Hound Sports Association. In their manifesto earlier this year, the Labour Party promised to ban trail hunting. So this year, organisers have said they're sending a strong message to the new government. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, 5 minutes after 4 o'clock. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. So this week, Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves doubled down on the removal of winter fuel allowances for about 10 million pensioners, many of whom will be cold over the winter, too afraid to switch the heating on as energy companies prepare to rack up their prices by 10%, which is odd, really, because when the Tories were in charge, the Labour Party's own research when they were in opposition suggested that just under 4,000 pensioners would die if the Tories went ahead with the exact same plan. Are old people expendable now, Rachel? Or is there some research somewhere that says otherwise? Oh, sorry, I forgot, you didn't do any other research on the effects of this policy, so we'll just have to take your word for it that 4,000 pensioners will die. But hey-ho, there's a black hole and we've got a plan. And what, to put the pensioners in it? What was that? Difficult decisions?
We're going to have to take the tough decisions and take them early, and we will. Part of that is being honest with people about the choices that we face, how tough this will be. And frankly, things will get worse before they get better.
Well, on that cheery note, a plan put together by people who, in the main, will never need to suffer the consequences of, because, let's face it, our MPs are pampered and don't live in the world that you and I inhabit. For starters, the basic salary of a Member of Parliament in the House of Commons is £91,346 plus expenses, and that was from April this year. In addition, MPs are able to claim allowances to cover the costs of running an office and employing staff and maintaining a constituency residence or a residence in London. This year alone, on top of their salary, our Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has already claimed £4,500 in accommodation, £2,055 in council tax, and bear in mind they are thinking of scrapping the single-person discount, which has been very beneficial to me, I might add, as a struggling single mother, and very much needed. In rent, she's already claimed £2,280 and £100 on utilities, and these, as I understand it, are just her personal expenses. In fact, go and check it out for yourselves. Go to theipsa.org.uk. And IPSA is the independent body that determines the amount MPs earn. But yet the MPs never turn down their pay rises. Why would they? And every year when these rises occur, most say, oh, it's not up to me, but what can I do? What can I say? I guess I'll just have to take it. MPs have subsidised bars and restaurants, and once they have done their time, well, many of them end up in the Houses of Lords on another cushy number. So here's what I think, Rachel. Most of us on earnings of 93k have to pay for our own accommodation, council tax, no free transport, and very rarely work in environments where food and drink are subsidised. And don't get me started on the bars. And all those expenses, Rachel, would in the real world be coming out of our wages. So I challenge you, Rachel, to spend a week with a pensioner who is just above the winter fuel allowance threshold. I doubt you'd last a day. I also invite you to fill in the pension credit form yourself. Let's imagine you have arthritis, which is very common in old age, which worsens with the cold, by the way. And bear in mind, as there's a 9-week backlog, Rachel, you probably won't be seeing it very soon. So what do you think? Yeah? You didn't even, apparently, do a risk assessment on the impact of your policy. Pretty ill thought out, don't you think? Perhaps you could do the risk assessment personally by actually living it, Rachel. So I think Parliament could save a fortune if MPs have to live by the same rules as the rest of us. It's a bit like being in prison, Rachel. You've been an MP that long, you've lost track of what it's like in the real world. And to all you MPs, in the real world, 93k for the majority of us would have to cover all our costs, and most of us don't get free clothes or use stately homes that are paid for accommodation, or paid for travel, or paid for travel to work. Most of us have to make sacrifices, which we have to fund all by ourselves. Perhaps if you lot lived like the rest of us, you'd have an understanding of the effect of your policies have on the lives of real people, the people that you are supposed to serve. So I was a bit angry there. Right, but before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking two former MPs, do MPs deserve to have their fuel payments paid for by the taxpayer? Then it's The Pulse, where we look into the latest health stories. Now, this week, the government has confirmed that a ban on junk food adverts before 9 o'clock will come into effect from the 1st of October 2025. Well, will this help Britain's obesity epidemic? I doubt it. That's coming up in the next hour. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Sorry, my lips almost stuck to my teeth in the middle of that one. Well, joining me now, the Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute, Maxwell Marlowe. Maxwell, well, you can see how I feel about the whole winter fuel scenario. Let's take a look at the MP's earnings, though, right? £93,000, that's quite a lot. Most people don't earn that. So is it reasonable to suppose that perhaps some of the expenses for MPs should perhaps not exist and they should maybe live like the rest of us?
Hi, Nana. Thank you for having me on the show. No, we should be paying MPs more, actually. Let's remember that there are only 650 odd MPs, and we need our policymakers to be of the highest quality. And a lot of the people of the very highest quality are working in the private sector in very competitive jobs that are paid much more. And in my opinion,
give me an example.
Singapore, for example.
Sorry, just quickly stop you there, Maxwell. So give me an example of somebody in the private sector who will probably earn a lot more than an MP. You know, like give me an example of a similar job or some representative somewhere.
Well, Singapore is a fantastic example of this.
In this country, though.
In the private sector, we can see accountants, lawyers, doctors, professors, people who work in finance, innovators, people who work in tech, engineers. There are loads and loads and loads of people in this country who earn way more than that, and I think would be very, very welcome in Parliament. And we should really tempt them to do this public service with a higher salary. To be honest, I think it's pitiful that we're paying our policymakers, our legislators, only £90,000 a year. It should be much higher than that, 150 odd.
150 odd. So add in all the expenses and everything else like that they get, it's probably nearer 150 anyway, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?
Yes, well, of course, but that's just the expenses for running the office, for doing their job as an MP, and we should have expenses for that. They should be kept an eye on. I'm glad you brought up IPSA, which is quite transparent. But I think it's really important that we give our legislators the tools and indeed the incentives to do a really good job. And at the Adam Smith Institute, something we would recommend is linking MPs' growth. MP salary to the growth of the economy. And as you'll know, for the past 2 months, we haven't seen any economic growth. So they shouldn't be getting a salary increase, in our opinion. But if you can link it to economic growth, I think we'd all be much better off because of it.
Well, I think that's an incentive for them to do a good job, because otherwise a lot of them are sitting there just taking the money, and I think some of them become a little bit deluded whilst they're cocooned in this wonderful environment of Westminster, where they sit there and they get subsidised bars, subsidised restaurants. Now, I'm not really that jealous of that. I'm just upset that within all of that they can't see that policies like winter fuel payment is a little bit harsh and a bit unfair. Do you think that... give me some more detail on that winter fuel payment. What do you understand? How much will the Treasury raise in doing this?
Well, they won't raise anything from this. They'll save about £1.4 billion, as far as Rachel Reeves has told us so far. But that really doesn't cut the mustard as far as, the size of the problem we're facing in this country. We can put the fiscal black hole, as it's known, to one side. I know that the Treasury have refused to give the Financial Times any information on the makeup of this black hole. But, I mean, let's look at, the people who are paying for this. It's you and I, Nana. It's your viewers at home. It's the taxpayers. And you said in your monologue earlier, fund all by ourselves. We're doing that. Let's look at taxes. Tax Freedom Day this year, which is the day the average person stops paying the Treasury, was on the 10th of June. That means taxpayers are working for 141 days of the year to pay for taxes. The deficit, I'm sure remember, start of the coalition government, a lot of people talking about the deficit. That's essentially the credit card we use to borrow on international markets to pay for day-to-day spending. That's £120 billion. That's essentially a whole month of tax in a year on top of the taxes we already pay. And unfortunately, we need to be having a really serious look at either increasing taxes massively, which is something we really should not be doing, or we need to be cutting large swathes out of government spending. Because let's remember, the national debt is £2.3 trillion pounds, and I don't think we're going to have. I know my great-grandchildren won't be seeing the end of that. Never mind, the people who are receiving state welfare today. And of course, the state pension is the largest expense in the single expense in the welfare area of government. That's £138 billion. It's ginormous. We need to have a look at our finances, and we need to start cutting.
But there's no mention of growth there, though, is there?
No, there isn't. But, if we're going to have to... unfortunately, I'm not sure how much cutting we're going to be doing. So that means we have to pay for more out of taxes. And we know that taxes can limit growth. One of the big concerns we're seeing at the moment, it's twofold. Firstly, we're seeing maybe an increase in capital gains, which would be the highest capital gains tax in Europe, if the rumours are true, which is going to be massively disincentivising for investment, and investment leads to growth. And the second thing is the non-doms policy, to be honest, Nana. And I know it seems quite alienating, but that's really important, that we should not be abolishing the non-dom status, because a lot of these non-doms are investing in high growth industries in this country. We haven't had growth in 2 months. We need to fix this. It's a serious, serious problem.
2 months since Keir Starmer took the reins, and everything is getting worse before it gets better. And he's saying that he's going to require 2 terms to do that, 10 years. He should be lucky if he lasts even 10 more weeks if this carries on. Listen, Maxwell, so in your view, you think that MPs should be paid more? And then would you ditch the expenses altogether, or...?
I think that'd be wise, yes. I think we should have prudent MPs. And, I've met lots of MPs throughout my time at the Adam Smith Institute, and a lot of them are absolutely excellent. But sometimes I do question the policy decisions coming out of Westminster and how good it is for for free markets, for a growing economy and for free people. And you'll come on to it later, I'm sure, Nano, but, this outdoor smoking ban is not something I'd give a pay rise for, to be honest.
It's a bit of a nonsense. Maxwell Marlowe, Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute, thank you very much. Right, let's quickly welcome again to my panel former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins and also former Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle. Lloyd, he's suggesting pay rises. We'll talk to this in a wider scope, but what did you think on the monologue? Am I right about that, Rachel Reeves? Perhaps she could spend a week living with a pensioner who's just above the threshold.
I think it would be very useful for all MPs to spend a week on people who are on different forms of benefits. Pensions are a benefit. So if you're on the state pension, you live off the state pension, living off benefits. And if you're living off job seekers allowance, you're living off benefits. I think MPs would be useful. They have schemes for MPs to go and spend the summer working with the military or with the armed forces, or with firefighters, and they have schemes for MPs to go off to America for the month of the holidays. I think setting up a scheme for MPs to go and spend a month living with the budget, with a normal person. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I think GB News and us, we should promote that and start that scheme up.
I want Rachel Reeves. Now, I also would like to see Rachel Reeves fill in this pension credit form that she's telling everybody to fill in, the 20 pages of it or so. A lot of old people have arthritis and all sorts of things and don't have the help.
One of the questions is how long have you been in the country as well? Yes. So to me, are they giving it to other people who haven't earned the taxes over the years as well? So that's what I find concerning.
So you think, so what are your thoughts on the monologue? Am I wrong?
Look, I think, I liked what he said from the Adam Smith Institute about linking it to, how the economy's doing. I think
Norway does that.
Oh, really?
All of Norway's public sector pay, they can only get the pay increase that the private sector get. They can never go above what the private sector gets.
I agree with that, definitely.
Interesting.
Well, listen, we will talk about that more. Okay. We'll discuss that in just a moment's time. If you've just tuned in, welcome. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. 19 minutes after 4 o'clock. On the way, my great British debate. I'm asking, is it time to get rid of fuel payments for MPs? Don't go anywhere.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Many happy memories, and 9 in 10 Brits say certain foods evoke feelings of childhood nostalgia, with the mousse-like powdered dessert, Angel Delight, the most loved. Joining us now...
I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, what, Angel Delight?
I'm surprised it's number 1. Yes, very surprised. Well, to talk us through all of this is creator of the Crazy Sexy Food podcast, Hannah Harley-Young. Morning.
Hi. I've brought a selection of things that really define my childhood, particularly the Viennetta ice cream. And I have brought you some butterscotch Angel Delight.
Yay!
I'm going to expose myself live on camera and say that I've never tried Angel Delight.
Hannah?
I know. I don't know what that says about me.
I thought that was apple puree, actually. I'm so excited. Is it good?
Oh, my goodness.
Did I make it okay?
Oh, yeah. But to be fair, Hannah, it's not that hard to make.
What is it, though? That's what's so funny about Angel Delight.
It's chemicals, isn't it? It's just chemicals in a bag.
I mean, it's a load of additives, which, I mean, one thing that's also really interesting about all these nostalgic foods when you look at them is that a lot of things have been discontinued over the years.
Oh, dear.
So it makes you wonder, how did this one kind of get through the cracks?
Angel Delight came out #1, didn't it?
It did come out as #1. And also sort of in the top 5 was fish and chips, something I still eat today. Fish fingers, still a staple of my diet. Mr. Whippy, in that same survey, they said that 95% of people find that a taste from their childhood will take them back more than looking at a photo. And that's something that's really interesting for me, and it's the basis of everything that I do, and the reason really why I set up Crazy Sexy Food, or one of the reasons, should I say, was that I love this concept of memories of food. You know, I've interviewed hundreds of people over the past 5 years, and when I get to that question, you actually see their face relaxing, and there's something that it evokes emotion.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, wherever you're bang. Sorry, you're with GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Lots of you have been getting in touch. Fiona, thank you very much. She said, looking lovely in pink, thank you. Valerie on Prince George. What a lucky boy George is. Spoilt boy, that's what she said. And then Brian, brain on winter fuel. Lead by example and pay for your own heating. That's what they're saying with regard to MPs. And Beanie on the Lib Dems and reform. Why would Nigel Farage want an alliance with the Liberal Democrats? Well, yeah, I mean, there is that. But what do you think? tvnews.com/yours say. Lots of your comments coming. I will continue to read those throughout the show. Right now, though, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to get rid of fuel payments for MPs? As Labour are about to cut 10 million pensioners of their winter fuel allowance. And let's remind ourselves, MPs are able to claim allowances to cover the costs of running an office and employing staff and maintaining a constituency, residents or residents in London. So what do you think? Is it right that they can continue to claim all these different expenses? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to get rid of fuel payments or even allowances for MPs? Joining me now, former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins, also former Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle. Right, Lloyd, what do you think? Is it time? We need to stop this.
Stop the expenses.
Well, let's talk expenses, fuel payments, all the other bits and pieces that they're getting money for.
I mean, I think your interview of earlier on, Maxwell, was interesting. He was saying that we should cut, so he was therefore, I assume, in favour of stopping the winter fuel allowance, and he was saying that MPs should be paid more, so totally the opposite of what your monologue was effectively about. MPs' pay is about average. You know, kind of most head teachers of a secondary school will be paid more than an MP. If you're talking about kind of equivalent, most people would say a secondary school head teacher is an important role. Most people hope.
But they wouldn't get all the expenses and all the other
stuff. They're paid more, and they do get the expenses. Hang on a second, because you are in those expenses, including the staff salaries. So with an MP, with a head teacher, you would include the head teacher, all the staff salaries of that school, all the office equipment for that school, the gymnasium equipment. So I'm sorry, your argument is absolute bullcum.
That's the second part. So, like I said, there's the personal expenses, and then sorry, because you just said my argument is bunkum, so I'm entitled to respond to you.
Go on.
Okay, so the first part, and I did say these are the personal expenses. Yeah. There is also the business expenses, which I did not cover in my monologue.
Yes, but you haven't just mentioned just then.
No, but I'm asking you about salaries and expenses with regard to individual personal expenses, not with regard to the cost of running the school and all that, because I have not mentioned those in my monologue, and the monologue did not go into that. And actually, twice in the monologue, I said that these are the personal expenses and not those.
So out of the personal expenses...
Yeah, so take that bunkum back.
Well, OK, I'll take is bunkum back, but then don't mention staff or office costs.
You mentioned it.
No,
you just mentioned it. You just mentioned it about schools. You made a comparison.
I made the comparison because you have twice mentioned office costs.
You made a comparison.
I made the comparison because you have twice mentioned office costs.
When?
twice.
When?
Just
afterwards. Afterwards.
Just before you asked my question.
No.
Yes, you did. Well,
Afterwards.
The viewers can do playback.
No. Listen. Sorry. Hold on. Sorry, Lloyd. This is my show.
Yes.
So let me be very clear with you.
Yeah.
Okay. We are talking about personal expenses.
Okay. So let's talk about personal expenses.
You made a comparison with regard to schools, and then you brought in other expenses with regard to running the school. I did not bring those expenses.
You
in.
did.
Sorry. Let me finish, please.
You did bring them in.
Let me finish.
Well, you brought them in.
Let me. You don't know what I'm going to say, do you? Do you know what I'm going to say?
Well, if you're...
Are you reading my mind?
Yes.
Are you reading my mind?
Yes.
Well, I think you've read it wrong.
Go on, say it then.
Oh, that's nice of you. Thank you so much. Whose show is this?
Yours.
Thank you. Let's just get it straight.
On.
OK. So we'll stick with personal expenses.
I'm happy to do that.
And if you do that, don't talk about the other... The monologue is not comparing, because you talked about my monologue, it was not comparing expenses with regard to what the MPs do in terms of their constituency and those business costs.
Go on. So
are we clear?
I'm happy to just talk about personal expenses, if that's what you want. So on personal expenses, when an MP becomes an MP, it's quite right that they shouldn't have their personal house, etc., covered. Right. But it is, I think, right to say most people would not expect Rachel Reeves to be paying the fuel bill, or the Prime Minister to be paying the fuel bill for 10 Downing Street and 11 Downing Street.
No, but that's a different allowance. So in the IPSO report, if you look, it divides their own fuel, and then it has the fuel for their business expenses. So these are two separate sets of expenses. And the ones I read were the ones at the top.
They live in... So they live in 10 Downing Street and 11 Downing Street, as well as having offices there. So office costs and living costs. Now, clearly, no one expects the Prime Minister
to pay for the
I don't expect them to pay for the fuel in 10 Downing Street in their flat either, in 10 Downing Street. And I also don't expect MPs to pay for their work flat. Now, I personally think that they open themselves up to your argument and lots of accusations of dodginess because of the way it's done. And I think it should be like happens with our diplomats, happens with when people go and are often sent on work. They should have to stay in a hotel, or the company, Parliament, should arrange for a house for them to live in and should pay the cost. And then when they stop being an MP, then that house or flat should be given to the next MP that takes over. And I think that would be fairer and people would be more transparent about that. Whereas at the moment, it looks like the MPs are pocketing it, and it looks, Rachel Reeves, it looks very bad.
Well,
but I don't think in reality it is wrong for an MP or a minister to have a flat paid for if it's not their main house.
Well, look, if you look at the point of this, right, the actual target of this is the fact that if you're going to remove a fuel allowance from people who are needy, and let's remember...
And that was the wrong policy. Let's agree on that, yeah.
Let's remember what the Labour Party said. Those with the broadest shoulders will carry the heaviest burden. It isn't pensioners. Andrea Jenkins, your thoughts?
I mean, my thoughts is... What I don't like is hypocrisy. And Labour, right since they got into power, is do as I say, not as I do. And... We know that civil servants kept trying to get the Conservatives to do what these are doing, Labour's doing now, but we refused because we could see the impact on our older people. And so I think you're right, actually, Nana. If they're doing something so drastic at a time when pensioners need this fuel allowance, when energy costs are so high, then the others shouldn't get it. Well, I think during this time, you know, if they're going to punish people, then they should be punished.
Exactly.
I genuinely think that. But the fact they brought that policy in is wrong. Now, I agree with Lloyd in the fact that, I mean, I don't want to just see rich people going to become MPs. And my home's in Yorkshire, and I wouldn't be living in London otherwise. And so I think if it's a hotel or some kind of living accommodation where it's...
Service department.
Service department, exactly.
And that's what most companies will send you to a service department and they pay it, rather than this...
I don't mind if it's a room in Parliament where it's got a bed.
I always stayed in a bed and breakfast, and I never had a flat for my whole time.
Yeah, but you see...
I had one because I've got a little one. When you've got a child, it's harder.
This isn't... But the bottom line for this monologue and my comments on this are that those are the broadest shoulders will carry the heaviest burden. So they have broad shoulders.
Yes,
so why are we paying people who are on £93,000 a year, why are we paying their fuel allowance or whatever it is that they... I just don't see why that...
But we should look at the public sector as well, you know, who's on even more salaries than the Prime Minister. If we're doing this, we should look at every level of the whole public sector.
Like the highest paid civil servant in the NHS is a talent manager on over £500,000.
Wow.
Right? Why? There are so many wastages within this.
Oh, completely.
That why attack pensioners when if they were to even take down that civil service by a fraction, they would recoup a load more of that money. And I think...
Yeah, look at the civil service pay rises.
I'm angry because that's my money as a
public sector pay rises.
They are spending our money very, very badly.
But the reality is, I'm afraid, some people in my party really don't like universalism. So universalism where you give it to everyone and then through the tax system you get it back. And the fairest form of means testing is the tax system. Instead, what a lot of people in my party quite like is they like targeted. And targeted means form filling, it means bureaucracy. And I personally hate bureaucracy, I hate form filling. I think a progressive taxation system where then you give everyone the benefit to spend how they wish, gives them freedom.
But the issue with Labour is as well that they don't like people doing the right thing. I mean, to me, all those pensioners who worked hard all their life, and we're taking £200 off them. And look at what I disagree with as well. Those people willing to pay private school fees for their child, which is actually not costing the taxpayer. They're going to drive people back into the state schools and end up costing more.
Listen, it doesn't add up. What do you think? gbnews.com/you'll say you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, the Pulse, junk food ban, secret eaters and fat families. Steve Miller will join me. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories. A man has allegedly sexually assaulted a woman on the same day he was released from prison under the government's early release scheme. It's understood he was released as part of the policy which aims to ease prison overcrowding on its first day on Tuesday. Well, he allegedly reoffended in Sittingbourne in Kent and was later arrested at an address in South London. He appeared at a magistrate's court on Thursday, charged with sexual assault, and is due to appear at the Crown Court next month. He's been recalled to prison. In other news, the Prime Minister met with the US President Joe Biden at the White House in the American capital last night. The pair sat down for strategy talks about global conflicts that Sir Keir Starmer described as long and productive. Speaking afterwards, the Prime Minister also said he and President Biden reached a strong position regarding ending the conflict in Ukraine.
We've stood with Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to self-defence, and we've stood united, not just with our allies here in the US, but across with our NATO allies. That's very, very important to us. But today was about having the chance to talk not just about a particular step or tactic, but the strategy in relation to Ukraine. But also we covered the Middle East in some extensive detail and other areas across the world. So it was a really important occasion for us to have this chance to discuss with our allies.
Meanwhile, the government's facing further backlash following its decision to cut winter fuel payments. Figures released by the Department for Work and Pensions estimated almost 800,000 pensioners will miss out on the benefits under the new plans. Of those set to lose the support, around 2/3 have a disability and 83% are aged 80 or over. Downing Street has said that a full impact assessment of the change hasn't yet taken place. And today marks National Trail Hunting Day, an annual event organised by the British Hound Sports Association. In their manifesto earlier this year, the Labour Party promised to ban trail hunting. So this year, organisers have said they are sending a strong message to the new government. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we have a bit of a split in the weather for this weekend, fairly unsettled in the north, but mostly fine and dry elsewhere, and it is going to be feeling warmer than of late too. And the reason for this split in the weather is that we've got high pressure dominating the south, but generally low pressure in the north. And notice the squeeze in the isobars there too, so fairly blustery conditions in the northwest. As we head into this evening, it is going to be turning fairly chilly across the south, particularly under clear spells. May even see some rural grass frost develop in southern areas. But across the north, largely mild, plenty of blustery showers moving their way in across western parts of Scotland, and then some rain and drizzle into northern England by the time we reach Sunday morning. So fairly chilly in the south, but milder in the north. Now, to start the second half of the weekend, we're going to see plenty of bright spells, but also plenty of showers moving their way into northwest Scotland. Still fairly blustery here, though winds should ease up through the day. Quite a cloudy start in Northern Ireland, and we've still got this band of rain and drizzle moving into northern England, northern parts of Wales. But elsewhere, there should be plenty of bright sunshine. But as I say, a fairly chilly start in the south. Now, through the course of the morning, this band of rain and drizzle is going to be fairly slow moving, so in some places it's going to remain fairly damp through the day. Plenty of showers across Scotland, these banding together to bring some longer spells of rain at times. May see some hail and some thunder mixed in there too. But across the Midlands and the south, once again, another dry, fine, settled day, perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. But feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. And then into the evening, we'll eventually see that cloud, rain and drizzle ease away, and it's going to be turning cold once again across the north, but those showers are going to be easing away. And as we head into next week, high pressure's generally dominating for all, so lots of fine and settled weather too.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome to GB News. 37 minutes after 4 o'clock, I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views, which I've been reading quite interestingly. Linda said, sorry, Nana, I'll have to switch off now. Oh, hang on, no, I can't read that one. Joe says, oh, Nana, if only it was you in Downing Street, Operation Common Sense would be well and truly underway. Somebody told me off, they said, I'm being very rude to that gentleman. Look, what it is I feel very passionate about the winter fuel allowance being taken away from pensioners. And I'm sorry, but I think MPs get paid a lot of money, and if those with the broadest shoulders are carrying the heaviest burden, then I'd be looking to strip some of them of some of those benefits they're receiving and also reduce that civil service. It's bloated, but that's my thoughts. Keep them coming. I'll read lots more. But now it's time for The Pulse, where we look into the latest health stories. And this week, the government has confirmed that a ban on junk food adverts before 9 o'clock will come into effect from the 1st of October 2025. The Labour Party, which pushed for the ban, aims to tackle childhood obesity through stricter advertising regulations, alongside a total ban on paid-for online junk food ads. Well, joining me now, former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller. Steve, thank you so much for joining me. Sorry, I hope you didn't see me get angry there about the winter.
I did. You are on fire today. It's brilliant.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Love it.
Now, what do you think about this? Young people don't watch TV. I mean, banning ads before 9 o'clock. What do you think? What's your thoughts?
Absolutely. Listen, let me give you... I think Keir Starmer's heart is in the right place on this. He does want to help, but I think he's completely and utterly misjudged what should happen. 4 points. Number one, what will happen? I'll tell you what will happen. Firstly, advertisers will reroute their spend, their marketing spend, into other things, such as leaflet drops, which can be very effective, A-boards as well. I don't know if you've ever seen people on the street, they're wearing an A-board, advertising pizzas and stuff like that. So that will happen. They'll reroute it into PR. They'll probably do, reroute the finance into their apps and make their apps much more attractive. The second thing is, you've hit the nail on the head. Kids don't really watch traditional TV anymore. And what happens is at night time, when they're getting from school, they're on their games, they're playing with their mates on their digital games and stuff. The third thing, which we must always remember, is parents are the leaders here. It's a parent's job to manage the health of their child. So again, banning is just not appropriate. And my final point is, common sense suggests that if you go out onto the street, you're going to see very quickly a lot of junk food in different shops. Look at the whole environment. So I don't think it's really going to do very much at all, except possibly harm financially broadcasters and also people that work potentially for those broadcasters as well. So I think he needs to rethink this one. His heart's in the right place. I'll give him that. But this is misjudged.
But a lot of people would say that something needs to be done, though. Does something need to be done in terms of advertising of junk food? I mean, look, people are educated. You can go and research this stuff. You know it's bad for you. The excuse that, I didn't know it's bad for me, that doesn't work because it's everywhere. If you want to research, you can Google things. You can find out anything about anything within seconds.
Yeah, we've got to be more blunt. We've got to be more blunt, Nana. So what that means is I have no problem with a fast food shop or outlet having on its window, if you are fat, think before ordering. I've not got a problem with that. That sort of direct approach, which will emote with people. What you have to do to change behaviour is you have to sometimes use the stick as well as the carrot, and you've got to be direct with people to get them to take responsibility. The other thing is, if I was Keir Starmer, what I'd be doing is using common sense in terms of thinking what countries have got low levels of obesity. I'd be getting on a plane, I'd be going to Japan, and I'd be talking to the experts over there about, what are you doing, guys? Because it seems to be working, because your obesity rates are really low. What are they doing? So I don't quite get it. Feels a bit gimmicky, all this banning this, banning that. This at this rate as well, because he's banning quite a lot, isn't he? At this rate, we'll have the ban of the week. You'll be doing an item called the ban of the week at this rate.
No, because it was smoking. I mean, and also, look, he's targeting school children. So why not bring back home economics in every class? You know what I mean? There are far better ways of tackling the lack of education that directs people to fast food than simply banning banning the advertising. You've got them in a captive at school. Every school should have food and nutrition, home economics. Why is nobody thinking laterally with common sense?
Well, I don't have a problem at all with teaching kids about food and home economics and stuff. But what I would say, Nana, is that the vast majority of people in this country of all ages know what foods are generally good and what foods are not so good for us. It's common sense. I did a survey once. I went onto the street and I said to people, tell me what foods are more likely to make you fat and what foods are more likely to help you live a slim life. And 90-odd% of the people knew exactly what they should eat and what they shouldn't to be slim. The key is the motivation of people to get them to do it. And where we've fallen down in the UK is we have normalised obesity. And he's going to have to make his mind up, because we teach kids at the moment to sort of accept that being fat is all right, love your curves and all of that sort of thing. So we'd be better off banning fat acceptance. Yes, ban size 0 models, but also ban obese models as well, because that should not be the norm.
Wow.
That's just my view.
Well, whilst he's on the banning mission, Sir Keir Starmer could potentially consider that. I actually think that's a pretty good idea. Steve Miller, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
You're welcome.
He's the former presenter of Fat Families. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up in the next hour, my great British debate this hour. And I'm asking you whether you think we're right to get rid of smartphones. What do you think? gbnews.com/you'll say.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
An army veteran has become the world's most tattooed woman after a 10-year journey to ink 99.98% of her body. I mean, that's really nearly everywhere. But I wonder, I mean, yes, she is unusual, and you'd know her if you met her, frankly, wouldn't you? But are tattoos acceptable they're becoming more and more acceptable just amongst all of us, aren't they? But what about in the workplace?
99.98% of her body tattooed. Do you think this would affect the way that she is received at work?
I do affect it would how she is seen at work, just purely because tattoos are still so stigmatised in the workplace. In today's rapidly evolving society, the traditional standards of what is socially acceptable are being redefined. Facial tattoos, full body tattoos, once stigmatised, are increasingly seen as a form of personal expression, and there shouldn't be a barrier to one's professional or social life.
If you are going for a job, for instance, we make up 90% of our minds about somebody within the first 3 seconds. And I have written a book on body language, and the face is just so important. You need to have the smile, you need to be able to read the facial expression, even when we're speaking. Now, if the face is really heavily tattooed, you can't do that. Jade said that there is still this stigma, particularly to facial tattoos. We do judge people with tattoos, don't we? We do. Unfortunately, we do, because it's not the norm. And as a human being, we tend to judge what is not the norm. And as Jade says, we are getting much more used to it. It is much more socially acceptable. But a lot of firms will say, if you've got a tattoo, you cover it. We don't want tattoos in the workplace.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
47 minutes after 4 o'clock, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, does banning things work as a public health method? Now, the government have confirmed that a ban on junk food adverts before 9 o'clock will come into effect from the 1st of October 2025. And the Labour Party have also pushed for bans aimed to tackle childhood obesity through stricter advertising regulations alongside a total ban on paid-for online junk food ads. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, does banning things work as a public health option? Right, let's go to joining me now, my panel, Dame Andrea Jenkins and also Lloyd Russell Moyle. Andrea.
Well, see, and I've just been eating a packet of crisps and a piece of cake, so I don't think I'm a good advocate. No. Look, when I was on the Health Select Committee back in 2015 for a couple of years, I was the only MP to actually vote against a sugar tax, because I think it should be better education, better labelling and better parenting. We've got to push back on society. I don't believe in the state managing everything. And I feel the same here as well, really. I don't think banning things necessarily works. I disagree with what they're doing about banning smoking outside in pub gardens. And I just think it shows quite a dictatorial type of government with all this banning.
There's some people might say that you're banning things for the good of the public and public health in general.
I think you've got to be careful with banning things. Banning things clearly does work sometimes. You know, banning lead in paint was a no-brainer, wasn't it? Because people could still paint their houses with alternatives.
And asbestos,
asbestos.
Exactly.
So I think that we would be silly if we said you should never ban things.
Yes.
But equally, I do worry a little bit that, you know, kind of sugar tax is a very good example. What then happens is companies put these artificial sweeteners.
Terrible.
There is a lot of evidence that it's very bad for you.
Mm.
And rather than actually promoting the positives, I think the big problem is that cheap food is bad food at the moment in this country, and it's quick. And if you have not much money and not much time, which most working people don't, then you will eat bad food. And if you have a lot of money or a lot of time or both, then you can eat healthily.
I mean, you're so right. In the election, actually, I had a takeaway virtually every day, and I can feel it on my tummy now. So
So yes, let's ban things that are absolutely bad for you, but actually let's promote things and let's get easier for people the right things to eat, because people will make the right choices if they can.
What about specifically with the 9 o'clock watershed ban on junk food? Do you think that's effective?
The thing is, I don't think it's necessarily going to stop people. You know, if they've sat in front of the TV, they're feeling peckish, they've got the takeaway, you know, in their drawer, they've got their takeaway menus, they're going to order it, aren't they? Yeah.
And finally to you, 20 seconds.
Well, probably a ban of time like this is probably less and less useful now. We have streaming services, as your commentator said. But clearly, stopping chocolates being advertised at the front of a till for pester power of parents, that probably is quite useful. So it depends where the ban is.
And I agree with that,
Well, I suppose the pester power
useful for me as well as a chocoholic. So,
it's true, and the banning, that sort of thing kind of works as well, because it stops me from just picking up a little rubbish just at the end of my shop. But this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Well, I've got Miranda she's not from Watford. Oh, no, it's somebody else. Sorry about that. It's Rob Bright in Watford, and also Miranda Richardson from Northampton. So she's not the Miranda Richardson, she's our Miranda Richardson. Right, let's go to Rob first. Rob, what do you think? Is banning things the way forward, and what are your views on the ban on junk food advertising?
I know, pretty in pink today, if a man's allowed to say that these days.
Thank you. Yes, you can. I love compliments. So what do you think?
Well, Starr must think it's going to work. I mean, he must have done an impact assessment, mustn't he? Does banning advertising ever help? But it didn't work for cigarettes. You know, you still get kids smoking at 12 years old. Kids talk to other kids. You know, word of mouth is the best marketing tool you can ever get.
Yeah.
I don't think an advertising ban is going to necessarily deter kids from doing anything.
No, I agree with you on that one, Rob. Let's go to Miranda Richardson in Northamptonshire. Miranda, what's your thoughts? You've got about a minute, Miranda.
I'm losing track, Nana, and what we're banning this week. You know, my industry hit the other week, and now we're on to food and fast food. You know, I think earlier on you kind of summed it up. Education. People don't learn to cook at home anymore, or certainly at school, so they're not cooking at home. But we now live in a fast-paced, fast-life environment, so everything is fast, quick and easy. And with that comes the much higher risks. You know, where do we stop? A watershed at 9 o'clock, no good. I know very few kids now that sit and watch telly because they're TikToking, they're Snapchatting, they're on their Xboxes, they're on everything else other than watching mainline television. So who's that going to help? It won't help the parents because they've already fed them at 5 o'clock. You know, it's just never ending. And I think we've got to put it back into people. And common sense, we keep talking a lot about that. And we know there's not much existing. But that, you know, and that's what you've got to push it back to. It's got to be common sense. You know, and everything in moderation, surely.
Well, listen, Miranda Richardson, thank you very much. And also to you, Rob Bright, thank you for your thoughts as well. I'm going to read some of these out. Heather says, Nana, how is it have your say if you can't read them out? I've just read it out and you haven't said anything. Honestly, Heather, tell me what you think, but I've done it anyway. Let's see, any more. Oh, goodness, we'll be talking about this as well. This early release sex offender who reoffended on the same day of release. That went well, didn't it? Wonder how many more there will be. Exactly. Oh, God, we'll talk more about that as well. That's just an absolutely absurd notion to release people before the sentences. But listen, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/your say. I will read them out, as I did with yours there. But first, let's get your weather with Honor Criswick.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we have a bit of a split in the weather for this weekend, fairly unsettled in the north, but mostly fine and dry elsewhere, and it is going to be feeling warmer than of late too. And the reason for this split in the weather is that we've got high pressure dominating the south, but generally low pressure in the north. And notice the squeeze in the isobars there too, so fairly blustery conditions in the northwest. As we head into this evening, it is going to be turning fairly chilly across the south, particularly under clear spells. May even see some rural grass frost develop in southern areas. But across the north, largely mild, plenty of blustery showers moving their way in across western parts of Scotland, and then some rain and drizzle into northern England by the time we reach Sunday morning. So fairly chilly in the south, but milder in the north. Now, to start the second half of the weekend, we're going to see plenty of bright spells, but also plenty of showers moving their way into northwest Scotland. Still fairly blustery here, though winds should ease up through the day. Quite a cloudy start in Northern Ireland, and we've still got this band of rain and drizzle moving into northern England, northern parts of Wales. But elsewhere, there should be plenty of bright sunshine. But as I say, a fairly chilly start in the south. Now, through the course of the morning, this band of rain and drizzle is going to be fairly slow moving, so in some places it's going to remain fairly damp through the day. Plenty of showers across Scotland, these banding together to bring some longer spells of rain at times. May see some hail and some thunder mixed in there too. But across the Midlands and the south, once again, another dry, fine, settled day, perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. But feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. And then into the evening, we'll eventually see that cloud, rain and drizzle ease away, and it's going to be turning cold once again across the north, but those showers are going to be easing away. And as we head into next week, high pressure's generally dominating for all, so lots of fine and settled weather too.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your chance.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 5 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, though, just as well, Lizzie Cundy, and also should smartphones be banned? For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the topics hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories from the GB newsroom. A man allegedly sexually assaulted a woman on the same day he was released from prison under the government's early release scheme. It's understood he was released as part of the policy which aims to ease prison overcrowding on its first day on Tuesday. He allegedly reoffended in Sittingbourne in Kent and was later arrested at an address in South London. He appeared at a magistrate's court on Thursday charged with sexual assault and is due to appear at Crown Court next month. He's been recalled to prison. The Prime Minister met with US President Joe Biden last night to discuss strategy and tactics regarding Ukraine and the Middle East. Meeting at the White House in Washington, D.C., the pair sat down for talks that Sir Keir Starmer described as long and productive. Speaking afterwards, the Prime Minister also said that he and the US President had reached a strong position regarding ending the conflict in Ukraine.
We've stood with Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to self-defence, and we've stood united, not just with our allies here in the US, but across with our NATO allies. That's very, very important to us. But today was about having the chance to talk not just about a particular step or tactic, but the strategy in relation to Ukraine. But also we covered the Middle East in some extensive detail and other areas across the world. So it was a really important occasion for us to have this chance to discuss with our allies.
Meanwhile, more questions have been asked about the government's decision to cut winter fuel payments following a vote earlier this week. Figures released by the Department for Work and Pensions estimated almost 800,000 pensioners will miss out on the benefits under the new plans. Of those set to lose the support, around two-thirds have a disability and 83% are aged 80 or over. Downing Street says a full impact assessment of the change has not yet taken place. A rebellion could be brewing within the Labour Party following recent comments by the Prime Minister around a ban on smoking outdoors at pubs. Labour MP for Newcastle upon Tyne East and Wallsend, Mary Glindon, has tabled a motion in Parliament against her own party in order to try and block the potential plans. In the motion, she praised the indoor smoking ban of 2007, but said extending the ban outdoors could unduly restrict individual liberty. Today is the first day of the Lib Dem party conference in Brighton, with the cost of living, defence and veterans, climate change and, crucially, their plan to fix the NHS are just some of the topics on the agenda. Earlier this afternoon, party leader Sir Ed Davey arrived at the conference on a jet ski. He's scheduled to speak at the event tomorrow, where a celebration's anticipated after his party won 72 seats in July's general election, their best ever result. Someone who's speaking at the conference today is the Deputy Leader for the Scottish Liberal Democrats, Wendy Chamberlain. Earlier, she told GB News about the need for parties to work together to tackle the broken NHS.
Without sorting social care, and we've been very clear that we are keen to work on a cross-party basis to solve it, because no matter what party is in power, social care as an issue is not going away. But if you don't sort social care, you're not going to fundamentally sort the problems within the NHS. Keir Starmer has said that fixing the NHS is a 10-year job. He won't be able to do that unless he keeps other parties on side so that we can all do that work together.
And the funeral of Olympic athlete Rebecca Cheptegei took place in her home country of Uganda this morning. The runner died earlier this month after she was doused with petrol and set alight by a former boyfriend. She'd recently returned from competing in the Paris Olympics when the attack took place. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 5 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins and also former Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle. Still to come in the interview, my guest this week has rubbed shoulders with the greatest A-listers across film and sport. Of course, it is show favourite Lizzie Cundy. She'll be joining me in the studio. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, Ilford South MP Jazz Athwell was renting out flats with ant infestations and black mould, as well as not paying for licences for those properties, many of them. So should he be facing consequences quicker than this? Although I don't think he's faced any consequences yet. Send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. So let's talk about Ilford South MP Jazz Athwell, who's renting out flats with ant infestations and black mould. Now, he'd introduced a property licensing scheme as Redbridge Council leader and admitted that his own flats did not meet these standards. In fact, he didn't have a licence for at least 7 out of those properties. Yet he's still an MP and he's yet to face consequences. So, joining me now, my panel, former Labour Minister, MP, Lloyd Russell Moyle, and also Dame Andrea Jenkins. All right, I'm going to start with you, Lloyd. Charles Athwell, he's still knocking about the Labour Party. I don't hear any real murmurs about anything about to happen to him. Is there anything going on with him? What's happening
Well,
to him?
he was, of course, the leadership favourite when they forced out Sam Tarry, who was the sitting Labour MP in that constituency, and they imposed him. And so, of course, it would look very embarrassing, wouldn't it, if they had to then get rid of him when there was already a very good local MP that was very active in that area. Look, let's talk about the issue. If a landlord has a compulsory licensing scheme in their area and they don't register that property, then there should be a punishment. And if MPs are found to have broken the law, that should be able to trigger a recall petition. That's just how the system works, that's how the law works, and that's what should be happening here. Now, I think
a recall petition, what does that mean?
Recall petition means that if 10% of the population in his area, and there's always 10%, because there's always at least 10% of people that voted against you, aren't there, want a new election for a new MP, they can do so. So it's very easy to get it, but it can only be triggered if the person's broken the law or broken the rules of Parliament. And now, I think not licensing sounds to me like it's broken the law. Now, I think
But it was his own scheme, though, so he was as the chair of the scheme.
Yes, well, so then he can't claim ignorance. But whether it's his own scheme or not, I actually think that's irrelevant. If an MP breaks the law, doesn't follow the law, then they should be able to trigger a recall petition. Whether they knew the law existed or not, it's their job to... Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. I think on the issues of black mould and ants that were mentioned, now, on that, there needs to be an investigation. It's not always clear-cut. Black mould can sometimes just be someone using a heavy shower over a prolonged period of time and not opening the window.
No, this was the pictures of it, so we've seen them.
Yes, I know. But so clearly what needs to happen is there needs to be an investigation. That's not as clear-cut. But to me... To me, it is clear-cut. If you have a licensing scheme in your area and you have properties that are not licensed, that is a breach of the rules, and there needs to be some sort of punishment for those breaches of the rules.
So why have the Labour Party kept very quiet?
Well, I'm not sure it's down to the Labour Party to do that, but I note that Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, has said now that there needs to be some sort of punishment prosecution on this, and so he's the Mayor of London. Redbridge is in London, so I would like to see some action.
Why do you not think that it's not for the Labour Party? He's a Labour MP. I get it, if it was me or you, that might not be a party political thing, but this is a Labour MP who has introduced a licensing scheme which his own properties are not... he has not followed the rules himself whilst he was the head of the council when the scheme was initiated. I spoke to Stephen Barrett, who's a lawyer. He wouldn't commit to saying that Jazz Athwell would have broken the law. But whether he has or he hasn't, surely this should trigger some sort of...
There should be an investigation. And clearly what's interesting is when the Labour Party have people that they dislike, they're very quick to suspend and investigate.
And lose the whip.
And lose the whip, lose my seat. On a personal kind of level, that happened to me. But when it's people they do like, then it takes a bit longer. I think there needs to be fairness here and accountability. I actually think that there's a problem with Parliament that we let the parties do that element of it, because, of course, then people will always be trying to protect their own. And we saw the Conservatives doing that a lot in the last government.
Well, let's not blame them for this
a big mess.
No, let's not bring them...
I'm not blaming the Conservatives.
I know what you're saying, but I don't want to bring them in because...
It caused the Conservatives a lot of problems, and it would have been better if they hadn't.
I mean, I can't understand why...
Jenkins.
I can't understand why he's got the whip. I mean, this is terrible, isn't it? You know, you're talking a person living these awful circumstances, and the fact that he's still got the whip and is an MP...
Sorry.
And like you said, it does it feels like there's some favouritism there, doesn't it? And I do wonder if Rayner was still dating Sam Terry, whether she'd be trying to bring him back and getting rid of him.
Possibly. I don't think we can speculate.
I can speculate.
You can speculate, but I doubt
Absolutely.
that's the case. Because listen, my concern is this: you saw how swift the justice was when there were riots and things like that.
Exactly.
You've seen. I mean, we can't talk about the Labour councillor who talked about slashing throats. We'll see what happens with that particular investigation.
He was arrested, though, wasn't he?
Well, he was,
yes.
but then he's pleading, I think, not guilty. I don't think we can talk about that too much at the moment. But let's come back to Jez Athwell. I'm just not understanding why the Labour Party have gone so quiet on this, and why Keir Starmer has even allowed this to go on for any length of time. I mean, it's been a good few weeks now.
Oh, absolutely. I think they're hoping that it goes away with all these other headlines. But you're right, it looks bad. And the fact, like you mentioned, Lloyd, that he was responsible at the council at the time. You know, ignorance is no excuse, and he knew about it anyway. It's bad, and he should lose the whip, or Starmer should come out and say something about it.
Something that I think that Starmer did say a few words, but he didn't do anything that would be. There was no action, and of course
there's no place of consequence at the moment, is there?
The renters' rights reform as well. They've just come out with that, haven't they?
They have, yeah, and the no-fault evictions, etc. So yeah, if they're flying that flag for the renters, then surely it works both ways.
Quite right.
So we all agree.
Something needs to happen. Something needs to be done, and what the public cannot accept is that MPs of any party are above the law.
Yes.
And to some extent, this is an area where I think that people expect higher transparency, not lower transparency.
Yes.
Yeah, well, listen, keep your thoughts coming at gbnews.com/you'll say, because lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. The screen's taking so long to load up. Let's have a look and see what you've been saying, because, you know, there's a lot of things happening politically at the moment, and the worry is that if we don't sort of address people like Jez Athwell and the things that he's done, then you know, these people go under the radar. Hugh says ignorance of the law is no excuse. There is a school of jurisprudence which says that there are so many laws expressing so many different principles that a judge can make any decision he likes. Statutory instruments containing elements which can be changed by a civil service from day to day add to the confusion. Yes, it's true, the civil servants do have a lot to shout about. Molly says we can't get served at our local fast food shop for all the delivery people shouting and insisting on getting their food first for delivery, so it's not fast food for us. Again, that's a good point, because actually a lot of people are using the different delivery food apps and stuff for junk food, so it doesn't make any difference. Here we go. Stephen says, why did the government ban me using scissors at a pub? Was it because they couldn't handle any more cuts to the budget? Very good, darling, very good. Cassandra said, let's face it, sugar and fat makes food more tasty, and it takes a great deal of willpower to deny yourself something which is enjoyable. Well, listen, I could argue with you that actually fat is needed. It's sugar that's extra, and the body doesn't need that at all. Then Rosie said, could there be a minister for parenting? So Keir could tax parents whose children are over a certain weight. It would make a fortune. He'd make a fortune for the Treasury. The Prime Minister would make the tough decision.
What would you do with fat MPs then?
Well, they can be the example. They should be the example.
No subsidy food in the House of Commons.
Yeah, they pay full price. I'd make them pay full price. Stephen says Nana can never be banned. Thank you very much. And Neil says, I just want the state, I think the state to get I just want the state, Nana, to get out of my life and do the bare minimum on issues only the state can do. Leave me alone, I'm an adult. I'm with you. I'd like them to collect the bins. I don't want to pay an extra fee for them collecting the green bin when they've been collecting it all along. And now suddenly I've got to pay a subsidy. What are they doing with the council tax? What the hell are they doing? Right, let's see. And finally, this
pay increases.
Pay increases for them. Yes, exactly.
Paying adult social care, unfortunately, takes most of your council tax. The vast majority for old people in care homes and adults in care homes, which is expensive.
It is a big bill,
then they need to make sure that's payable for everybody, though. Adult social care, I think, is a big subject.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think that if you get dementia...
It should come from the Treasury rather than from local... Because local tax, people expect to go for local services like your roads and your bins.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I don't understand why they've divided it like that, but I do in a way, because it's more expensive, and it's the most expensive thing. OK, Cassandra says two-tier care said that he would interfere in people's lives less. What was the exact phrase he said? Tread more lightly on your lives. With all the restrictions he's introducing, the opposite is happening. In fact, two-tier care is U-turning on many of the things he said before the election, or he's doing some of the things he never mentioned, like winter fuel allowance. But anyway, what do you think? Keep them coming. gbnews.com/your say. Next, in the interview with show favourite Lizzie Cundy, we're going to hear about everything from A-list celebrities on the red carpet to her dad working with Margaret Thatcher and her work with domestic abuse charities. This is Nana Akua. I'm on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
On Tuesday, the 3rd of September, at St Paul's Church in Wilton Place in London, a lucky few will sing highlights from Mozart's Don Giovanni in front of a paying audience with an orchestra and under the baton of Gary Matthewman, the conductor and artistic director of Brunswick Vocal Arts. Why is it important that young singers have this opportunity with an orchestra?
There's a gauntlet, if you like, that I think lots of young singers have to run between finishing the relative comfort of their conservatoire education and becoming firmly established as professional singers. Lots of the ones who show real verve and real promise and work really hard end up for a little bit too long being trapped in a kind of cycle of being the understudy. But some of them are ready to kind of go that extra mile and reach that next milestone. And we as a charity thought, well, what a lovely thing it would be to handpick some of these best young singers, give them intensive coaching on the role that they're going to perform, give them the chance to work with professional players for the first time, and crucially, have the thing professionally filmed and recorded. Because the first question all young singers are asked when they meet somebody influential now is, well, what's your website?
You have coached the singer, coaching the singer either towards a recital or towards their performance, their part in an opera. Tell me a little bit about that process.
It's a case of asking them questions which make them bring a character to life, so that when an audience member witnesses this person singing, they don't just think, oh, that's a pretty noise. They think, oh, there's something going on here that I recognise. And especially in a context like this, which is related, I think, to when people sing recitals. Say they sing 20 songs in that one evening. They've got to present 20 roles, 20 mini operatic roles, if you like. And we need to see the change in their bearing. We need to see the change in their approach to the text, as well as to the kind of the technical focus of their singing and how they produce sound.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
isn't
This
it?
is coming up to 19 minutes after 5 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's all right, it's fine. You've got 41 minutes to go. But it's now time for the interview. And my guest this week has rubbed shoulders with the greatest A-listers across film and sport as the main showbiz reporter for the OK magazine. And during her time at ITV, she was known as the queen of the red carpet, and she also enjoyed being a glamorous grid girl for Formula One and spent time covering the FIFA Football World Cup. Of course, you know who it is. It is, of course, show favourite commentator and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy.
Hello, Nana.
Hello, Lizzie. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to be here and on the sofa. What a treat.
I know. Well, listen, a lot of people hear you debating with me and we discuss everything else, but we don't really talk about you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you.
My favourite topic.
So you can bang on for hours.
I can bang on. I've been very blessed, Nana, not just with two wonderful boys, being a mother, but just with my work, which just took off. It really started, as you know, I was married to Jason, who used to play for Chelsea, and he sadly had cancer. And I went on to talk about it on this morning show, and then they offered me a job, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Wow, so literally from there. So what about if we go a little bit further back? I mean, where were you born? What were your parents?
I was born in Richmond, and my mum ran Jaeger Clothes, who's she's very feisty. I think that's where I get it from, Nana. And my father was art director for Saatchi & Saatchi advertising agency, and that's where I got my love of politics, really, because he worked with a lot of famous MPs. One we may know of, Margaret Thatcher, with the slogan "Labour isn't working." I don't know if you remember that advertising campaign. In fact, the Tories could possibly use it now. Labour isn't working, and it was very famous. And
is that the red eyes with Tony Blair?
Yeah. And do you know what? It just being in that house, there were a lot of famous people coming in and out. So I think I got the love of politics, and I was used to being around a lot of well-known people. So for me, it was sort of like the perfect thing to go into what I did, which was the red carpet, because I just felt at home there.
So you went on ITV. They loved you, of course they did. And so what did you do there? What did you start doing?
Well, I started doing actually fashion stuff, and then I went on to showbiz, and then they asked me to go to the World Cup. And it was a bit difficult because my ex-husband played football, and they asked me. He was a bit like, why are they asking you?
He was on the bench, was he?
Well, it was mad. Anyway, I had some amazing times, and that's where the WAGs were born, and everyone was like, who are these girls? They hit the scene, and everyone wanted to know about them and not the football. They really were the sort of rock stars, and they were on the front covers of every paper and magazine, and I didn't believe what was going on, really. But some of the girls loved the term, some of the girls didn't, but all made careers out of it, and me as well. I went from then doing a musical in the West End, leading called I learnt to sing. I think everyone can sing, actually. It was a bit daunting, and that was called Wag the Musical. And I remember it lasted longer than Simon Cowell's musical, where his was called You Can't Sing or something, and I lasted longer, so I was very proud of myself. And then did a book and shows, 3 shows, Wag's World. You'd go around to footballers' wives and look in their drawers and look at the houses.
Oh, I would have loved to see that.
So it was lovely.
What a great show.
Yeah, like through the keyhole. And it just snowballed, Nana. It's been amazing.
But you love politics. Your father worked with the late Margaret Thatcher, but you also are quite involved in charity.
Yeah, I do work a lot with charity, and it's very important. Cystic fibrosis is one. I lost my dearest friend, Wanda, to cystic fibrosis, which is one of the biggest genetic diseases. So I work a lot with that, and also Women's Aid with domestic abuse victims, which is very important to me. I've been through it, close friends have been through it, and that's why I'm so upset, going back to politics, with this government for letting out criminals early. I cannot tell you the harm this is doing. I have a friend who is literally in her bed so scared that her ex is going to be released, who is a horrific abuser. He got 3 years. There are people that have come out only serving 6 months, 9 months. And what this government is doing is just diabolical. I have no words.
Well, of course, there's the story of the woman who was raped by a man who'd just been released from prison. out of from Kiss Starmer's early release scheme.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm saying, who does this Labour government appeal to? The 1,700 criminals they're, releasing, and the public are in danger. And I think they're putting in the wrong people into prison and releasing the wrong people. I think it's very, very worrying.
Although they would argue that actually they're only serving a tiny bit less than the sentence because a lot of these people were up for early release anyway.
But
and also that the prisons were full, and that was caused by the Tory party.
Well, I think we've got to look at previous governments as well, who knew prisons weren't great and buildings were crumbling. But I think we've got to, this way of releasing prisoners early is the wrong move. And there's a lot of people who are, really worried, including myself.
So come on then, what are these next projects you've got? I think you've got some exciting
Well, it's very exciting. I've got a new show just on Amazon, which has just landed. You can tune in, called Red Carpet Uncut, and it's got all the fabulous bits of me with some of the biggest stars. One we know and talk about very often on your show, Nana, Meghan Markle.
Oh my
the first interview.
Really?
Yeah, and she's squealing because she saw Victoria Beckham, and I had to tell her to stop squealing.
Is this on the...
Well, there's lots you're going to have to watch. There's lots, and we've got Tom Cruise as well, which Tom Cruise is one of the nicest celebrities, and after doing his interview, I didn't want to watch his film, to be honest, so I said, come on to my son, let's go for something to eat. He was in the restaurant as well, whistled me over, and we had the whole evening together. He really is one of the nicest Hollywood stars you can imagine. But Meghan Markle, yeah, this was before Harry.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
She was before Harry, and some people are sort of coming out and now talking about what their experience of her was like. So, Lizzie, what would you say to people who are trying to get into TV and all this sort of thing? Because you must get approached all the time by people who want to get into the media and...
Look, it's a tough business and you've got to have tough skin. My skin's as tough as a Hermes handbag. It really is. Don't take things to heart. Keep going and believe in yourself. And I just say, just go out and do it and just get to know. It is a bit of luck and who you know and talent. You've got to have all these three things, but have a speciality, something you really love, and tune into that and go for it.
Now, you see, I think what you should do is you should do like a posing modelling school. Because we keep seeing these pictures of you and you look amazing.
Oh, darling.
Sensational. Just literally you know how to move your head. When I do it, I sort of look like I've got like two big bags under my eyes. I'm like, oh. And I see my picture, I'm next to you, Lizzie, and you look amazing. You're doing something to me, or look, and I've got my eyes rolling to the back of my head and I look like there's something wrong with me.
Well, you know what, Nana, I might take you up on that, do a schooling. I mean, I actually went to one. I went to a modelling school. Her name was Judy James, and she taught you how to walk, how to get out of a car, how to pose. And she's a body language expert. And I was her #1 girl, and I learnt a lot from Judy. And it is how just to tip your head, little easy things, which make a whole difference in a picture. But I'm long in the tooth at doing it, and I'd love to help other people to get on. I like helping people. But it's a great industry, and my father always said, do something you love. Doesn't feel like work, and I'm very blessed that's the case.
It is true. So your Netflix thing, remind us of what it's called, where we can get to...
Well, that's on Amazon Prime, and you can get that. Please tune in. And, and it's got great bits in it, actually, because we've got, I interviewed Mickey Rourke. I don't know if you know this story.
No, God.
Mickey is an old mate of mine, and he called me one night and he said, Lizzie, join me in a restaurant. So I said, fantastic, all right. As we were eating, the waiter came up and said, there's a huge array of paparazzi outside the restaurant. And he said, my God, my girlfriend's going to kill me walking out with you. So I said, I know, I've got the back way out. Come, my car's around the back, come follow me. So as we went round the back, all the press rang, and he jumped into my boot for some reason. I don't know what. And I don't know why he did that.
Did the
It was
press
like
see him jump into the boot?
No. He wanted to hide. It was like Starsky and Hutch. I put my foot down and just went a little bit too fast round the bend, and poor old Mickey Rourke, he got out of the boot wondering what had happened. I got pulled by a policeman for going a little bit too fast round the bend, and I think Mickey Rourke was very grateful to be out of that boot by the end of it. But the show has funny stories, loads of funny stories with different... And it's very funny. Usually the ones who are the big Hollywood A-listers are the nicest, and it's the ones that are on the lower branch, shall we say, are the more difficult. It's very funny.
Yes, it's interesting. That's often the way, isn't it? And you find that in TV as well. Although the ones that have been there for some time and stay there tend to be really nice people. And
Well,
the
that's
reason
it.
why.
But it was funny I'll go back to Meghan Markle. When I first met her, she was a real girl's girl. She wanted a British boyfriend. She loved London. She wanted to go out with the girls, doing selfies, talking about clothes, and was so sweet. So I'm quite amazed what she has kind of turned into.
It does seem a bit odd,
it's a shame. I thought she'd won the lottery with Harry, and we're all so happy for them. And it's a shame how it's really turned out.
Well, today I did look in the papers, and there you were again. You get in all of them. What's your top tip to people then? Just one little nugget that you could give people to try and get themselves in the papers and do some of the things that you do. Obviously, you probably don't want to give too much away, but I'm listening.
Well, I think you've got to wear something that is going to attract attention. Possibly it doesn't have to be raunchy, but just be different. Be a bit special, you know, and also be nice to people. You know, kindness goes a long way, and you never know who you talk below and then make the way up. You never know who's on that ladder. So my father always said, be kind. Always be kind, and I've always tried to do that with my work and help people, and I think, it's kind of paid off.
Well, it has indeed, Lizzie Cundy. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank
we look
you.
forward to seeing you in your new Amazon show.
Thank you so much.
What's it called again?
It's called Red Carpet Uncut.
Red Carpet Uncut. Thank you so much, Lizzie Cundy. We shall see you hopefully on here next week. That is the brilliant Lizzie Cundy. It's just coming up to 31 minutes after 5 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should we ban children and teenagers from owning smartphones? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, as well as two commentators with very different opinions. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories. A man allegedly sexually assaulted a woman on the same day he was released from prison under the government's early release scheme. It's understood he was released as part of the policy which aims to ease prison overcrowding on its first day on Tuesday. Well, he allegedly reoffended in Kent and was later arrested at an address in South London. He appeared at a magistrate's court on Thursday charged with sexual assault, and he's due to appear at the Crown Court next month. He's been recalled to prison. In other news, the Prime Minister met with US President Joe Biden at the White House in the American capital last night. The pair sat down for strategy talks about global conflicts, as the Keir Starmer described as long and productive. Speaking afterwards, the Prime Minister also said he and President Biden reached a strong position regarding ending the conflict in Ukraine.
We've stood with Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to self-defence, and we've stood united, not just with our allies here in the US, but across with our NATO allies. That's very, very important to us. But today was about having the chance to talk not just about a particular step or tactic, but the strategy in relation to Ukraine. But also we covered the Middle East in some extensive detail, and other areas across the world. So it was a really important occasion for us to have this chance to discuss with our allies.
And the government's facing further backlash following its decision to cut winter fuel payments. Figures released by the Department for Work and Pensions estimated almost 800,000 pensioners will miss out on the benefit under the new plans. Of those set to lose the support, around 2/3 have a disability and 83% are aged 80 or over. Downing Street has said that a full impact assessment of the change hasn't yet taken place. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we have a bit of a split in the weather for this weekend, fairly unsettled in the north, but mostly fine and dry elsewhere, and it is going to be feeling warmer than of late too. And the reason for this split in the weather is that we've got high pressure dominating the south, but generally low pressure in the north. And notice the squeeze in the isobars there too, so fairly blustery conditions in the northwest. As we head into this evening, it is going to be turning fairly chilly across the south, particularly under clear spells. spells. May even see some rural grass frost develop in southern areas. But across the north, largely mild, plenty of blustery showers moving their way in across western parts of Scotland, and then some rain and drizzle into northern England by the time we reach Sunday morning. So fairly chilly in the south, but milder in the north. Now, to start the second half of the weekend, we're going to see plenty of bright spells, but also plenty of showers moving their way into northwest Scotland. Still fairly blustery here, though winds should ease up through the day. Quite a cloudy start in Northern Ireland, and we've still got this band of rain and drizzle moving into northern England, northern parts of Wales. But elsewhere, there should be plenty of bright sunshine. But as I say, a fairly chilly start in the south. Now, through the course of the morning, this band of rain and drizzle is going to be fairly slow moving, so in some places it's going to remain fairly damp through the day. Plenty of showers across Scotland, these banding together to bring some longer spells of rain at times. May see some hail and some thunder mixed in there too. But across the Midlands and the south, once again, another dry, fine, settled day, perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. But feeling warm where you do catch the sunshine. And then into the evening, we'll eventually see that cloud, rain and drizzle ease away, and it's going to be turning cold once again across the north, but those showers are going to be easing away. And as we head into next week, high pressure's generally dominating for all, so lots of fine and settled weather too.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome. Nana Akua here, 36 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. And it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should we ban children, not children, and teenagers from owning smartphones? Now, one of the biggest academies in England is cracking down on youngsters using their mobiles. Ormiston Academy's trust will ban their pupils from using their phones during the school time. Now, they say that the impact that this has on a child's mental health has a negative effect. So what do you think? For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should we ban children and teenagers from owning smartphones? Well, joining me now, I've got author and journalist Emma Wolfe, and also Battle of Ideas producer Mo Lovett. Right, Emma Wolfe, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think an outright ban for children under 16 would actually solve a lot of the problems that parents and teachers are facing. Certainly, I don't think there should be any smartphones in schools. I think that should be, completely taken as read, that we absolutely do not have smartphones in schools. But Nana, it's not only about mental health. We know about the rise in anxiety and depression and eating disorders, the bullying, the pornography, the violence, the unpleasantness online. We know about that. It's also about physical health. I think children and teenagers up to the age of 16 should be interacting with other people. They should be outdoors. They should be running around. There's nothing positive about a child or a teenager staring at a screen, staring at a smartphone. It's not good. It's even bad for their eyesight. There's been a rise in myopia amongst young people because children are staring at screens from a very young age. So I think an outright ban from the age up to the age of 16 would solve a lot of the problems.
I think that's what's happened to my eyes. They've just deteriorated at a rapid pace ever since I sort of turned 50. Right, let's go to Mo Lovett. Mo, what are your thoughts on this?
So I'm afraid to say I disagree completely. I love my smartphone. I use it for directions when I'm lost. I use it for looking up information all the time. I've got a heart rate monitor on there for health reasons. Why on earth would we want to deny teenagers the opportunity to have all the benefits of smartphones? I think the point that Emma's making is about responsible usage, and I probably have some agreement with you there and about play-based childhood. But I think this whole idea about mental health in children has been completely overblown. Jonathan Haidt wrote an excellent book where I think he had the best of intentions in terms of children's mental health. But the problem with that research is that it puts correlation and causation together. There are all sorts of reasons why children might be seeing increasing mental health issues. And certainly mobile phone usage, if we just were to blame smartphones for that, we wouldn't be looking at the deeper reasons. I mean, you think about what children are confronted with at the moment. We have a political and a media elite who tell children that the past was a terrible, violent, racist place. They've got no hope for the future. They won't get a job. They won't be able to get a house. And even if they can, we'll all die from climate change. Children need grounding. They need context, and they need if we just blame banning smartphones for this, we're not looking at the deeper reasons. It's no wonder children are anxious when we've got such a negative view of society. I would say I agree with Emma on sort of a play-based childhood. We definitely need more social interaction, and we need to be. But mobile phones can facilitate that as well. Smartphones facilitate that as well. I think the problem is you're putting the decision in the hands of the government when actually parents and teachers are far better placed to encourage responsible social media and smartphone use in the young.
All right, well, listen, Emma, OK, I'm going to put it to you that smartphones, it's like banning someone from eating sugar. Then the moment the sugar's there, there'll be some sort of weird rush towards that sugar. So do you not think that if you do ban young people from these phones, because I give my daughter a smartphone, it's the greatest punishment ever. If I say, bring me your smartphone, I literally watch her turn to jelly. It's just fabulous. I love it. But, it's great. But no, the point I'm making is this, though. It'll be like a sweet shop when they suddenly are exposed to them. Emma Wolf.
I take your point, Nana, and I know that, you can't just give them a smartphone at the age of 16 and expect them to know how to use the internet or anything like that. But I'm slightly confused by Mo's point. Of course, I'm addicted to my smartphone. I love using it for maps and directions and heart rate monitor. Well, I don't use heart rate monitors, but all of that stuff is fine when you're a grown-up. What I'm talking about is children and young people. There isn't anything that they need online which we didn't have in our childhoods, in books and in other people. It's nonsense about social interaction. It's not social. It's like when people say to me, my friends say to me, I'm going into a meeting now. And they genuinely think they're going into a meeting. No, they're not. They're staring at a screen on Zoom or on Teams. We've just lost the plot since lockdown, since working from home, since virtual meetings. It's not social interaction. It's not social media. It's deeply antisocial to be staring at a screen, typing out words with other people.
Let me bring in Mo. Let me bring in Mo, Emma.
More unpleasant than Twitter and the internet.
Emma, let me bring in Mo because we're running out of time. OK, Mo, you've got about 30 seconds. Mo, just to respond to what Emma said. She's made some good points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not a fan of social media either. What I meant is you can facilitate meeting people. I think the research shows that the young people who are struggling with mental health will go online because they've got mental health problems and they're looking at these terrible sites that we don't want them to be looking at. We're putting the cart before the horse. We need to solve, young people's mental health problems, give them a wide variety of play-based childhood, and then they can use their smartphones in a sensible way. At the moment, just banning the smartphone outright is not solving that issue.
All right, thank you very much, Mo Lovett and Emma Wolf. Right, let's get the thoughts of my panel, former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins and also former Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle. Lloyd, I'm going to come to you. What are your thoughts? Banning smartphones?
Well, this is a rehashed announcement because the last government already banned smartphones in schools.
In schools.
And so this academy announcing it is just actually announcing what every single other school is already moving towards. And that's quite right. It's quite right that in school you shouldn't be playing with your smartphone, you shouldn't be looking at your smartphone and nothing else. But there are all different kinds of children as well. And I don't think also we should be enforced, play in the playtime. Some children thrive from going into the library and reading a book, and absorbing themselves on their own with solitariness, because that's how they get through their schooling time. So lots of people find different pathways. I'm not convinced banning them for under 16s is helpful. And also, I'm not sure it's particularly the real world. This idea that we said, one of your panellists said, there's nothing that we couldn't find in books. I'm afraid they just don't produce encyclopedias anymore. And I want young people to know how to get information quickly at their fingertips. I want them to know how to determine what is rubbish information on the internet and what is quality information. I want them to be able to be taught that. So I don't want them to be banned completely from accessing these things, but I want them to be properly staged, properly regulated, properly monitored, and then when parents feel it's right for their children to have it permanently, they can do so, but they shouldn't be able to be on them all day, every day, at school and all through their childhood.
What about giving them one of those Nokia, say, 2020s, like a brick phone that's just a phone with just text messaging and phone calling, which is what a phone's meant to do?
No, I think it's difficult as a parent. They see us using our phones, don't they? And it's, until we stop using them, I don't think we can necessarily... I limit the amount of time my little one uses my phone and is better at it than I am, actually. But if you look at in schools, I think the phones should be confiscated if someone's found with a phone. But at the same time... it's double standards when they're using iPads in school, in the lessons in certain schools. So I think we've got to relook at the policy that it's not double standards. And at the same time as well, children learn so much this way. It's a new learning style. And like you said, Lloyd, being able to get information. And I don't want British children missing out on this. I mean, I've signed up Clifford now to learn coding on a weekly coding course, because I think that's the future. I want children to learn that aspect as well.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm quite happy that my daughter, well, she did change. The moment she got a smartphone, she was very interactive, did all the drawings and things like that, and then I gave her a smartphone, and suddenly her head was down. She was into that thing,
true.
Got a bit of an attitude, giving it all this, and I'm like, hey, I gave you that thing, I can take it away.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you, now it's such a powerful tool, because you can just say, I just look at her and I say, Africa, bring me your smartphone. And I just see her down, and I take the phone, I say, put it there. And she puts it down there. Then I leave it where she can see it. And then she does all things around the house, and she gets nicer and nicer and nicer.
It's so true,
and
isn't
I forget that the reason she's being so nice is because of the phone. I think,
she wants it back,
lovely.
yes.
Oh, this is so, she's lovely, she loved it. Oh. And then in the middle of that niceness, she suddenly goes, can I have my phone back? I think, that's what this was about. That's all this was about. So, yeah, look, I think the draw of a phone is completely addictive for young people. They need to be monitored. I would actually argue...
It's got to monitor, definitely.
I'd actually argue that people below 16 should perhaps get a brick phone, shouldn't be allowed to get the apps.
But it's also about what else you provide for young people. The mental health crisis is also because we've cut £1 billion of funding for youth services over this last 10, 15 years. And that means that, yes, they have a phone, but they also don't have the activities to go out to do otherwise.
All right, well, listen, thank you very much to my panel, but coming up, my quickfire quiz where I test the panel on some of the stories that caught their eye this week. This is GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry has got in touch with a lot of people surrounding the royals about a possible return, some sort of easing himself back into what goes on in this country, and tries to repair his image
This has been reported today in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, the major move is being branded as Operation Bring Harry In from the Cold, as he's allegedly growing dissatisfied with advice from American-based image experts.
Let's now speak to Jack Stooks. Now, Jack is a former gardener, senior gardener, top man at Highgrove there. And did you know Harry, Jack?
Yes, yeah, I did. The Harry I knew was always amazing, really good, lovely to be around. I think everybody wanted to be around him, really. He was the sort of life and soul of the family. What we've got to remember is at the time, we knew a book was coming out. We knew various things might come from that. We knew that there was problems with Meghan's family, and there was a lot going on at the time. I think things have, sort of been brushed aside to an extent. Whether or not the book was a mistake, I mean, he might think it was a mistake. He might not think it was a mistake. What we tend to do is we judge him on just the fact that he wrote the book. What we don't think is, why did he write the book? We don't ask the questions as to there was a reason behind him having to have his story known. And maybe, he needed that. Maybe he felt he just needed people to know his side of the story. Hopefully, that family can forgive. I mean, not forget, but be able to sort of move on in a different way.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, so just coming up to 10 minutes to 6 o'clock. It's time now for my quick fire quiz. If you just tuned in, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, live on TV, online and on digital radio. And this is the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. Joining me, former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins. Your buzzer, please. And also former Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moore. Your buzzer, please. Right, please play along at home. Question 1. Which famous presenting duo won their 23rd in a row BAFTA for the NTAs this week? Was it A, Dermot O'Leary and Alison Hammond, B, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, or C...
Oh, C.
No, you've got to wait till I finish the question.
Oh, OK.
This is not... You've
Sorry.
Or C, Anton Deck. Dame Andrew Jenkins.
I'm guessing Anton Deck.
OK, have you got...
I would guess Anton Deck as well.
OK, and the answer is, of course it is. They always win. We're a bit bored of it now, do you know what I mean? So I can't think of other people. There's loads of other people, like me, for example. Right, true or false? Liberal Democrats Deputy Leader Daisy Cooper has refused to make a campaign pact with... What did I say? You've got to wait till I finish the thing.
Well, the campaign
No,
pact...
I'm not finished. You don't know what I'm going to say. A campaign pact with Nigel Farage's Reform Party over the issue of electoral reform. True or false? Dame Andrew Jenkins.
It's true.
It is indeed. 2-0 to Dame Andrew.
You announced this earlier on in your show.
Right. All right. Closest answer wins.
Oh, God.
England's cricket team have drawn level in their T20 series against Australia. England's Liam Livingstone scored the most runs, but how many did he get?
No idea. 120.
120?
A T20, you don't get that.
I haven't a clue. I don't follow much cricket, so I don't know. 100?
100. Let's see.
Yeah,
Closest wins. It's 87.
87,
Dame
yeah.
Andrew Jenkins, 3-0.
That's a fluke.
Oh, you can't win, Lloyd.
I don't think I can ever win with you.
Very true, very true. Right, this is an open question. Strictly Come Dancing returns on BBC tonight after a controversial summer for this show. Hosts Tess Daly and Claudia Winkleman will once again return to front it. But who were the two original hosts when it first came to our screens? Press the button.
Well, the first one was, of course, Bruce Forsyth, but I don't know who his co-star was.
I can't remember.
OK.
No.
There's nil point from any of you.
Half a point, surely.
I'm afraid you can't. Well, I'll give you half a point, but you still can't win. It is, of course, Test Daily and St Bruce Sports Night. Right, finally, multiple choice. This week, there was a heartwarming moment as King Charles was hugged by a group of rugby players at Buckingham Palace. But what country did these sportswomen play for? Was it A, Fiji, B, New Zealand, or C, South Africa? Yes.
I'll go for Fiji.
Fiji? Press your buzzer.
South Africa?
I'm going to say New Zealand. Honestly, it's ridiculous. Right, well, listen, on today's show on X, I've been asking, is the UK's electoral system undemocratic? And according to our Twitter poll, 88.8% of you said yes, it is, and 11.2% of you said no. Yeah, and Franny, what are your thoughts? And is it undemocratic, yes or no?
It's not the best system,
yes,
but I'm happy with it.
Yes or no? Undemocratic?
I think it's not democratic enough.
All
so
right.
No.
No, you don't think it is. Right. And also, I've got to say happy birthday to you,
yes.
Lloyd. How old are you?
Happy birthday
75.
to you.
Well, I feel 75, but only 38.
38. Well, listen, a huge thank you to my panel. Lloyd, Labour MP, Lloyd Russell Moyle, former Labour MP, thank you very much. And also to former Conservative MP, Dame Andrea Jenkins. Thank you very much, Andrea. And as a very huge thank you to you at home for your company. Stay tuned, because coming up next, we've got Nigel Nelson alongside Danny Kelly. That's tomorrow, but next, it's a Saturday 5. Enjoy.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we have a bit of a split in the weather for this weekend, fairly unsettled in the north, but mostly fine and dry elsewhere, and it is going to be feeling warmer than of late too. And the reason for this split in the weather is that we've got high pressure dominating the south, but generally low pressure in the north. And notice the squeeze in the isobars there too, so fairly blustery conditions in the northwest. As we head into this evening, it is going to be turning fairly chilly across the south, particularly under clear spells. May even see some rural grass frost develop in southern areas. But across the north, largely mild, plenty of blustery showers moving their way in across western parts of Scotland, and then some rain and drizzle into northern England by the time we reach Sunday morning. So fairly chilly in the south, but milder in the north. Now, to start the second half of the weekend, we're going to see